I'm really happy to be here. Most of I couldn't attend all the presentations, but the few ones I listened to were really super inspiring. So thank you for having this conference. So I started Gardyn. I started Gardyn a few years back, and I think I just wanted to tell you a bit where it's coming from, because you may tell me, hey, why Gardyn and what is it you're trying to achieve? And so basically, I'm an engineer, and I've always worked in the energy industry, in the environmental industry, trying to focus on sustainability solutions, and more recently focusing on AI and cloud and automation. And I grew up in France. I used to live in Provence. Got married there. I love sport. I'm an outdoor guy. Spending a lot of time running, cycling, swimming, open water swimming, triathlons, Ironmans, and I was living in Provence, and I really loved that. My life in Provence, that was really nice, really great. And I moved to the US on the East Coast. I'm based out of Washington now. I moved to Washington in 2012, and I kept running. And after a few months, I was like, I don't feel like it's not like before. I felt it was, I don't know, like a lack of energy, or I put on some pounds, and I was like, it's different, and I was really struggling. I was really struggling figuring out, am I getting older? I'm not able to run anymore. What's going on? And that was really scary. And I spent some time looking at it, and after some deep thinking and research, I realized that actually that was the food I was eating. And, without realizing it, moving from one country to another, I moved from Provence, where produce were super easy to find, super fresh, full of nutrients. And without realizing it, I moved to, the East Coast. And, if some of you are in other places, maybe it's easier, but I can tell you on the East Coast, it's not that easy to find super fresh produce, and it. And I started digging deeper into this, because for me, that was really important. I had some big races coming up. I really wanted to be at the top of what I could do. And after spending a lot of time researching, I just realized what a lot of you said in the various sessions yesterday and today, but most people in our country ignore, or don't know, have no clue about, is the fact that most of what we're eating is very industrial, and most of it is actually is grown with a lot of pesticides. It's using a ton of water. Charlie, you mentioned this issue of water as well. And at the end of the day, what we're getting after traveling miles and miles is just, there is nothing left. So I was really thinking, can we change this? Can we do something different? And digging deeper, I realized how bad it was. One thing that struck me. Two things that struck me, actually. One, and I'm sure most of you know it, but one is, I came across the fact that, for example, obviously all the pesticides that are used are having a huge impact on biodiversity and in particular pollinators. And I came across the fact, for example, that early in the year, every year across North America, most of the beehives are actually trucked across North America down to California to actually pollinate the almond trees in California, because there is not enough bees left to actually pollinate all the almond trees. And I'm like, that's crazy. That's totally crazy. And the other way around, I was looking at a nutritional profile and studying, what healthy nutrition means. And I realized that, and there's a ton of research on this, is most produce, once harvested, loses typically 30 to 40% of their nutrients within, a few days. And then when you're like, okay, so how long does it take typically on average for produce to go from, being harvested to the shelf? And you realize that actually it's more than several days, sometimes several weeks. The stats for apples. On average, between the time an apple is harvested and the time actually you have it on your shelf, on average, it's 11 months. There is nothing left in this apple. So I was like, I really want to do something. And I started just for myself, for my training, to start growing my own plants, using hydroponic systems. But that was really difficult and clumsy. And I was like, I love having my own food, but there are two things that are really a pain in the neck. The first one is all these systems that I can see are really bulky. So basically, there is no way you can have this, in your living room. That's horrible. That's bad. But second, it takes a lot of space to actually be able to provide enough food to feed a family. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, I don't have time. I mean, everybody is busy. You don't have time to spend 2 hours a day to just take care of the plants, and you're not able to go on vacation because suddenly you have to who's going to take care of it. And I was like, we need to solve this. We need to solve these 2 points. How can we develop something that could be so compact that you can actually, within a small footprint, grow enough food for a family? And second, how do you actually automate this using the latest technology to make it that you don't have to have any skills, you don't need to be around, you can go on vacation and the system is just running by itself. And that's how Gardyn started. So I was like, I'm an engineer. I said, okay, I have no clue how to grow plants. I need to partner with someone. And actually, a friend of mine was at that time working at McGill, University of McGill in Canada, in Montreal. And she told me, there is an amazing department over there. You should really talk to them, and they can help you on the plant side. So I reached out, and I was thinking that they would laugh at me because I had absolutely no knowledge of how to grow plants. But I told them, I don't know anything about plants, but I know quite a lot about AI and automation. So maybe we could partner. And they said, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. So we partnered, and we started building this system that Gardyn started from. Started in my garage, iterated. I bought several 3D printers, started 3D printing some parts, and trying to build a system that could work and would be super compact and work great growing plants. And it didn't work. And it didn't work. And that was terrible. That was really terrible. And but I kept trying. I think I tried a zillion possibilities. I tried a zillion parts. I recruited my family. I have 2 boys. The boys, my wife, the cats, doing shift around the 3D printers. And after many months of trying and trial and error, actually it started working pretty well. And at that time, what I did basically is I turned the 3D printers from prototyping to actually production. I used them to make prototypes, fully functional prototypes, and I gave them to my friends. And I told my wife, just talk to them and let me know what they think. And after a few months, she came back to me and she said, FX, there is a lot to improve. There is a ton to improve. But overall, they really love it. The food is super good, super tasty, and people love the experience. They love having something, at home that they can grow all their food. And we said, let's go, let's try. And that's how we actually started Gardyn and tried to develop it. So we went through the industrialization of it. So how do you go from a prototype in your garage to actually having something that is manufactured and that can be sold? So we partnered with people. We found someone in China that would be open to manufacturing this device for us. I went to China. I slept at the factory over there. That was January 2020. So I was in China in January 2020, sleeping in the factory, just wanting to get the gardens so that I could bring them back to the US. And when I left mid-January, I got a few of them with me on the plane. I got a container full of gardens, departing from China, and I came back to the US. And when I came to the US in January 2020, people told me, you were in China. What? There was this coronavirus. Did you hear about it? And I had no clue. I was not in Wuhan. I was in the south of China, but I had absolutely no clue. I'd not heard about this at all. But the irony of it is actually when I left China and came to the US, China just locked down. And then when the containers with the first gardens came in the US, that was very early March. And you remember March 12th, lockdown, everything froze. So basically, if these containers had arrived 2 weeks later or left China 2 weeks later, there would be no Gardyn. There would be nothing. There would not be me presenting today. So yeah, timing is important, and you need to be lucky from time to time. And basically that's what we've done since we've really tried to develop this technology. As I said, this technology has really two big pillars, two big breakthroughs. One is this new technology in terms of growing plants vertically we've developed. That's something we developed and we patented. We have a ton of patents on this. And we're really proud of this because it's one of the most most dense way to grow food. We call it hydroponics. It's obviously based on hydroponics, but it's a different way to use it. And the second thing is artificial intelligence, and that's what I wanted to focus a bit more on today. So basically, if I can explain a bit how we're using artificial intelligence to make this work, maybe that's going to shed some light. Let me share my screen for a minute. Okay, here it is. Let me know if you see my screen. So basically, that's the Gardyn that you see. That's already the third generation. We're trying to improve it and releasing new generation. The goal of this device is to really, within just as Charlie said, with a very small footprint, just 2 square feet, to be able to feed enough to provide enough food to feed a family of 4. And the beauty of this is this device is fully autonomous. It's going to go all your plants. You just in the Gardyn app order the plants you want to grow. You plug them in the system. It comes like a K-cap, and the system is going to take over, recognize what kind of plant it is, and grow the plants for you. And it's going to let you know everything that is going on that you need to know about or do. And that's really, in my mind, the beauty of it. So if you look at the device here, you have these 2 bars that you see. These 2 bars are actually LEDs, providing all the wavelengths that the plants need. So it's a full spectrum LEDs growing the plants. You have a tank at the base that is between 5 and 6 gallons of water. So we have a pretty long autonomy. And then the wooden board you see actually contains all the electronics. And it looks like a very simple device, but actually it's very advanced in terms of electronics. We have a lot of sensors. Obviously, we have sensors about humidity, temperature. We have an ultrasonic sensor that is measuring very precisely the quantity of water in the tank. Obviously, to know when the tank is empty and to let you know that you need to put more water. But more importantly, or as importantly, we can compute very precisely the quantity of water that is actually taken up by the plants. And there are direct correlations between this quantity of water and typically the size of the foliage. So just using this type of measurements, we can know how much plants there is, how fast they're growing, and so on. But for us, the key element is really AI in terms of computer vision. So on every garden, there are 2 cameras. And these 2 cameras, so one on the right-hand LED bar, one on the left, and they are covering the whole field of plants, the lower part and the upper part. And what these cameras do, they actually take pictures. We are not taking any video. We are taking pictures every 30 minutes. That's absolutely enough. And for privacy reasons, we want to be super upfront about this, that people know the way it's working. They can see in the app the pictures that are taken. We're taking privacy very seriously. But what the system does, it takes these pictures, it takes all the sensors, temperature, humidity, water level, everything, and all this goes into our cloud, and we're running AI on this to understand everything that is going on the garden, on every garden in the world. And this way, we're able to do 2 things. We're able to optimize the growth of the plants based on all the parameters. And second, we're able to understand when we need to let people know about what's going on or things that they need to do. And our goal is very simple. We want to make it possible for the worst plant grower, for the worst brown thumbs to be successful at having amazing plants. That's our goal. And that means also, that's the discussion we were having with Charlie before this call. The AI is part of it because it brings a ton of data. At the end of the day, what is even the most difficult is understanding when and what do you need to tell people so that they get it, what they need to do. And that makes it like a breeze and makes the experience successful. So basically, you see here the camera, you see the app, and what Kelby is the name of our AI. Kelby is talking to the gardener and say, hey, this is what you need to do, this is what I'm seeing, and so on. The way it's working with the camera is the following. You have these two cameras. So here, these pictures are taken from the right upper camera. And you can see this in your app. So the funny thing is you can see your plants, even if you're on vacation, you can build time lapses of your plants. That's cool. But basically the cameras sees this plant. All these pictures goes in our cloud. Just to give you a sense, we are uploading every day between 2 and 3 million pictures in our cloud. And the system actually is going to analyze these plants. So I'll give you an example here. As the plants are starting growing, we are running a ton of different models of AI to detect all the things that are really interesting. So for example, in this one, on the top right corner, you see someone that has not put the pot the right way. That's going to be detected. It's going to say the slot is open. They're going to be a message to the person saying, hey, at this point here, this is not closed. That's not great because there's going to be some light in, that there could be some biofilm developing. Just close it. The top blue, actually, we are detecting that the cube inside is wet. That's something we are doing for every garden. The system is able to detect if something is dry or wet, not just with local things, just by the camera, by the difference of color of the cube. And we're able to detect that water is going through this. That's great. Oh no, there is no water, there is a problem. And then we can alert the person that they need to do something here. And then we measure the growth of the plants. For example, in this case, on the top left, there is just small leaves. It's really hard to see on the photo, but actually the AI is really good at detecting this. Small leaves, they are not true leaves yet. So that means these plants don't need plant food yet. And that's something really important. For others, you see they are growing faster and there are true leaves appearing. And that's also something we can detect and really, based on this, know exactly what the system needs to do or the gardener needs to do to be successful and grow the plant successfully. We can detect a ton of stuff. We can detect, obviously, all the various plants you have. Here that was interesting. We detecting flowers, strawberry flowers, as part of all the things we're detecting. Why? Because strawberries, like some of the fruits, need to be pollinated. So basically, we are able to detect when flowers are coming and say, hey, okay, you have now strawberry flowers. Let me show you how to pollinate them. You just take them gently, you rub your thumb around this, and that's it. And people can do it. They don't have to know anything about this, but we can really help them do the right thing. We can obviously detect things that are when it's going bad. Some people may, leave some windows open and have some aphids or pest infestation. That's something we're able to detect very early on. So, for example, here you see a strawberry plant with some aphids on this. And before it's even visible by the human eye, we're able to detect this through using AI. So we can tell people, hey, you know what? There are some bugs landing on your garden. This is what you need to do. And you can do it very quickly before even people realize that's happening. And obviously, you are way more successful that way. The other thing that we're doing that is super cool is actually being able to compute the quantity of biomass that is produced on every garden. The system, one of the algorithms we're using in terms of computer vision is actually looking at all the plants and detecting where they are, how big they are, and being able this way to compute how much biomass is produced. And you're going to tell me, why is it important? It's important for several reasons, because first, you can really understand how the biomass is developing, and you can really understand whether the conditions and the parameters of growth of the garden are optimal or not, and adjust them to make them optimal. So I'll give you the example. Obviously, we're doing this every day for every garden in the world. For every garden, we know exactly how this biomass is evolving over time. So here, I show you the curve. You can see, for example, the gray curve is the median fleet. And the cool thing is we can really test different optimization of the system to make the plants grow much faster. And you can see the gray, and then you can see different experiments we've run on different gardens, that's the red and the blue, to actually boost the germination, to actually increase the way the growth of the plants are. And this way we can constantly improve all the algorithms in terms of the way the plants are growing. The cool thing is we have a huge fleet now across a ton of different conditions. So that means we can real time really understand what's going on, how fast that's growing, and then optimize the growth of these plants. The other thing we can do that I think is pretty cool is compute what it means in terms of impact on the environment. We know that we're using 95% less water. We know that we are using absolutely zero pesticide. We know that actually using existing infrastructure, we are actually freeing up land that could be reclaimed. And we can compute, since we started, that we have already produced north of 2 million pounds of produce on Gardyn with no pesticide, with no impact on the environment. We saved 33 million gallons of water. Obviously, a lot of waste that has been avoided, and a lot of land that can be reclaimed. So that's the thing that we're super proud of. Personally, the thing I'm the most proud of is when I see our gardeners telling us, one of them recently told me, my daughter, when she wakes up in the morning, the first thing she does is actually going to her garden and pick strawberries, that was not strawberries in this case, that was cherry tomatoes, and picking cherry tomatoes and just eating them like candies. And I'm like, wow, that's great. If we can have kids, look at real food, fresh produce as a candy, we're on the right track. Thank you.
Bex, I want to jump in on the cherry tomatoes because I was so impressed when I guess my daughter was maybe 6 years old and decided that she didn't like to eat tomatoes. So we planted in a garden, not a Gardyn, an EN, outside, the cherry tomato plants. And her actions of being part of farming made it such a treat for her to wait and then have that taste and tell the difference between the fruity, delicious flavor of the cherry tomato versus something that came in a plastic container, to see how the flowers produced the cherry tomatoes. And now she is a cherry tomato enthusiast. So STEM education, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math are all part of, I believe, the Gardyn solution, because that's a byproduct of planting and cultivating right at home. So thank you for that reference to the cherry tomatoes.
And Charlie, you're totally spot on. In my mind, that should be our main focus. Our main focus should be, how do we make our kids, for us, it's over. I mean, but for our kids, how do we make sure they understand what real food is? How can they reconnect to their food that they know where it's coming from, they see it grow? And to your point, the behavior, the relation to fresh food is totally different. And I think that's what we owe to this new generation. We really want to make sure they're going to get better food, way better food than what we got.
I have a question here from the Q&A from our audience, and one of them is about mass adoption of a technology such as Gardyn. So how do you, in your business plan with your team, and I believe I was one of the maybe not 40,000th customer, but as a recent customer, 40,000 is the number that I've seen. It's a giant number relative to the perception of what might be an invention by someone who's a visionary, but it's also a small number relative to 300 plus million Americans and, coming up on 8 billion humans on Earth. So how can we, those of us participating, spread the word, or what are your plans to get adoption increased for this technology?
Yeah, and Charlie, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're proud to be at this level, but at the same time, it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing versus the amount of people and what we need to do. The thing I'm really excited about is the fact that the solution we're building, and we're not the only one. I'm not trying to push only us. There are a lot of people working on this type of solution, and that's great. The key part in my mind is, how do we make this? And the thing I'm excited about the technology we've developed is the fact that it's fully scalable. If tomorrow morning 1 million people in this country or elsewhere hear about it and like, yes, I want my Gardyn as well, within 3 days they have it. Within 4 weeks they are eating their own food. And in my mind, that's really the miracle of what we're trying to build, is having this fully distributed system. And my vision, the vision of our team, is, could we reimagine the farming system in a way that is fully distributed, that we can use every building, every existing infrastructure, every home, every school, every office to be the heart of food production, so that people reconnect to their food, so that the food production has no impact on the environment. And the cool thing with the solutions we're developing is this is absolutely feasible. This is totally scalable.
Well, let me riff on
So,
that by saying 10 years ago, when I started doing with the LED lights, energy efficiency, and we learned that we could also grow plants, very similar to the vertical bar that you have with the heat sink. So knowing that lighting space, thank you for doing the right engineering. We found that restaurants would offer a house salad. And I thought, how elegant would it be if the house salad in a restaurant was grown from produce produced in their house,
and
right? So
that's the
that
case.
that
Yeah.
daily recipe of specials would be what would come off of the garden. You know, I had envisioned shelves, but it's much more complicated for irrigation to do shelving versus what you designed with the vertical towers. So that could be an adoption play where you go to the restaurant. I now ask, if it's fish, for example, what has been caught locally and what has been caught wild versus farmed. Well, imagine you go to a restaurant and say, what are you growing locally on site? Farm to table distance can be measured in linear feet, not in miles. So that's just an idea of how we start to change the mindset into
Yes,
local food being the solution with
absolutely.
nutrient loss at a fraction, right? Because when you cut a plant, it starts to die. And I referenced it in my microgreen presentation that the 90% of veggies, lettuce that comes from California, 5 or 6 days of transit has lost over 40% of its nutrients. So
Yeah.
you're providing a solution that cuts that nutrient loss to zero.
That's really the goal. And you know what? So two things, I think you're absolutely right. The first thing is what you're describing, Charlie, is not science fiction. It is happening as we speak. We have now more and more restaurants reaching out to us and say, I want this for my customers. And they want to show that it's grown locally. And in terms of experience, it's totally different. There is this guy, we love him, he's in Anchorage. He has a pizzeria in Anchorage. And he's bragging that he's the only restaurant in Anchorage with fresh basil and Italian herbs. He has a wall of gardens, and he's like, now you have fresh basil on your pizza. But more seriously, totally agree with you when it comes to the nutritional profile and all that stuff. The second thing that is super interesting to illustrate your point, Charlie, is what we do on a regular basis. We take produce grown on garden, and we take the same produce organic from Trader Joe's, Whole Food, whatever, and we send this to third-party labs to do the nutritional analysis, nutritional profile. And the interesting thing is produce grown on garden are at least 50% more nutritious, and depending on the compound, sometimes 7 times more nutritious.
Wow.
And you're going to tell me, how is it even possible? And the answer is exactly what you just said. There is no magic. As soon as a produce is harvested, it starts dying and decaying. And just the sheer fact that you take something and you eat it within minutes, that's a game changer. That's it.
Let me also riff on the microgreens a little bit, because when I didn't know, as the first time owner of a garden, that you could buy microgreen Y cubes, I took some of my microgreen seeds and I just sprinkled them in a grow cube and put them into the Y pod, and they flourished. It was unbelievable. So what's so interesting is, I think you now have, maybe it's not that new, but a microgreen kit, which
Yeah.
I'm going to have shipped in. And I was amazed with the flowers from sunflowers and flowering plants. Like, I have a cherry tomato. My first one came in just 2 days ago. I couldn't believe that the vertical tower was able to cultivate such a dramatic range of plants. You know, we think of hydroponic as maybe like romaine lettuce or bibhead lettuce, butterhead. You know, the range was pretty impressive. And talk to me about the microgreens and the flowers. What are some of the
Yeah,
exotics that
that,
people
that,
can
that's a
grow?
great point. And to your point, Charlie, that's really our mission. I mean, that's the way we look at it. Our mission is to make sure people can have access to healthy food, but also, in my mind, and sorry, that's my French, descent, I think taste matters. And you want to explore and come back to things that are amazing. And what we've seen, and some people yesterday talked about it, there's been a standardization of seeds big time across the various decades and even recently. And that's too bad, because why is it the case? Simply because seeds and plants are optimized for the supply chain. They need to grow fast. They need to sustain and support and not be damaged by transportation and all that stuff. So the industry is optimizing for that. And in my mind, that's wrong. We should optimize for what matters, meaning us humans, the consumers. That should be the only focus. How can I get something that is super good test-wise and nutrition-wise? And so what we're trying to do at Gardyn is we have a team of experts focusing on plants, and they are literally traveling the world to find amazing heirloom, ancient seeds that basically our grandmothers were growing, but all this has been, dropped. We want to bring them back to life. And what we're doing with Gardyn is a platform. It's a platform where we want to bring back all these amazing plants that our grandmothers were growing. And the taste is incredible. The nutrition is incredible. And to your point, Gardyn allows to grow all these various things. So if you see, for example, on this picture that I'm showing here, there is a kohlrabi on the middle left, which is an old, produce, old plant. But it's super good. It looks like a bit like a turnip. So that's one. Right now we have roughly 100 varieties that we have tested and we're offering to people. We have selected all these varieties ourselves. They are handpicked. But to your point about flowers, the interesting thing, and to your point, we are doing microgreens, and that's something really important. It's superfood. Just adding a dose of microgreens every day in your diet, that's a game changer. So for us, that was absolutely mandatory to have this in our portfolio, and we keep adding new varieties of microgreens. I think right now we have 10 of them, 10 varieties, in particular the ones you mentioned earlier today, but this is essential. But the thing that is interesting is a lot of people are telling us, I love growing lettuce, microgreens, and all that stuff. Gardyn produce a lot. And a lot of people are telling us, you know what, I'd like to keep 1 or 2 slots. There are 30 slots in total. You can grow 30 large plants at the same time. They say, can I keep a few slots for flowers? And in the beginning, we had no flowers. We were really focusing on food. And we realized that our goal is not just about food. Our goal is to help people have a healthier lifestyle. And healthy or healthier means obviously food, but it's not just food, it's mental health. And what we're seeing again and again, and that was also mentioned yesterday and today, a lot of people see this reconnection to nature as something that is soothing, that is grounding, that is, it's something super important in our connected world where basically you have all your friends are virtual and your colleagues are virtual because you're on Zoom all the time. Being able to be connected to something real, to real nature with its own pace, that's something very important. So we started working on plants, and we came up with amazing varieties. In particular, one we're very proud is sunflower. Nobody can grow sunflowers indoors. I mean, not in a house, and simply because sunflowers actually look at the sun. And most of the lighting is coming from above. With our technology the light coming laterally, actually we can grow amazing sunflowers. We've spent a lot of time handpicking the right one so that they are not too big, not too small. They grow super well on Gardyn. And now we have people with Gardyn just of sunflowers. So you see the one that is just behind me. You see the sunflowers here, and they are gorgeous. And a few days ago,
let me get to a couple more questions, because the biodiversity is so inspiring, and the mental health of just taking a handful of minutes to check on your plants is good for the mind, and obviously then when you eat it, the body. One of the questions that has come in is about the PVC and whether there are any PFAs. How do you avoid any of the outgassing or with the piping, anything that can contaminate the water from the plastic?
That's a great point. So this is not PVC. We hate PVC, but this is not PVC. So we've spent a lot of time, to your point, on this question of, at the end of the day, I'm eating my food from my garden. I don't want any pesticide or chemicals. So this plastic is actually food grade plastic. There is absolutely no chemical that is leaking from this. It is plastic, high quality plastic meant for food.
I hope was hearing that answer, because you're a user as well as the entrepreneur. So that's important. The other question that came up is someone had asked about, with the UV lighting and exposure in the house, That's an incorrect perception. It's LED lighting for the grow plants. Ultraviolet light we had developed during COVID with similar shaped linear modules for disinfection of the pandemic. But this is
Right.
definitely, correct me if I'm wrong, light emitting diodes.
You're absolutely correct. There is no UV. These are full spectrum diodes meant to provide the wavelength for the plants. There is no UV in this.
That's great. And is it typically like a 4,000 Kelvin full spectrum white light, or do you know what the mix is on the LED?
Yeah, it's what you said, slightly lower in terms of Kelvin on purpose. So our temperature is more in the 3,500. And the reason is that's part of, ties back to the mental health. We don't want a light that is too cold. And we've done a lot of experiments with people to see what level of comfort you have with light. And one thing is we don't want people to say, hey, that's super cold, that's super bright. This is a nuisance, in my home. So we have something very cozy. And also the thing is you can dim your lights. So the system, you can really play with your lights the way you want. You can manage all the schedules in your app. So personally, as from 6 p.m., I have a Gardyn that just dims down very nicely, and I have a very cozy light.
Well, let me tell you with that dimming and the features, I want to talk just really briefly about the AI. You did such a good job on the deep dive. With technology, the features would include the dimmability. The benefit is human comfort. The feature of the AI might be those smart cameras. Well, and the sensor in the tank. The benefit to me was I got an alert because I have 3 gardens that one of them is low on water and needs to be topped off. So I get the message from the Gardyn app from Kelby say time to check. So I love technology, but at the same time, it's sometimes overwhelming. So
Yeah,
imagine with our smartphones, right? That we have so many benefits that are in there, but we use a very small percentage of them. We have to
yeah,
learn for your membership, because I not only bought the device, but I joined as a member. I am getting ongoing support through the AI. And if I need it with the email and a support, response to human capital as well as mechanical machine learning. And so I give you big praise because it's not enough to sell a piece of equipment. If we all had the smartphones and we weren't coached with videos or learning or friends or family member how to take advantage of them, I see you as giving us a smartphone, and we need to start to learn more about its potential for so many things beyond just growing lettuce, because
exactly.
that's what I had initially thought. I'm going
Yeah.
to grow lettuce more cost effectively with the garden than buying it at the store. When I did the math, 30 continuous plants that can feed a family of 4, I thought, great. My motivation was math. I'm going to save some money. But then I started to learn about all the nuances. So I think
Yeah.
the AI is sometimes scary to people, but
Yeah.
I want to convey to this audience there are benefits to having intelligence that helps you sleep at night, not wondering, oh, when should I set my schedule to add water?
Exactly.
It reminds you to do those things.
Exactly. And to your point, AI is just a means, it's just a tool, it allows the system to understand what's growing and to optimize it. The thing that really matters is how do we help people be successful? And to your point about technology, for example, one thing that people told us very early on is, when I go on vacation, what should I do with my garden? And we're like, yeah, that's a great question. We want the garden to be fully autonomous. So we developed very early on a vacation mode. You just tell your garden in the app, I'm going to go on vacation. I come back at that date. That's it. And what the system does, it totally changes the parameters of the plants. And it's going to actually turn the parameters so that the plants are quote unquote paused. They have actually, that's something also we patented because it's really top notch. Basically, it's playing with the light and the watering and in a way that tricks the plant, that the plant looks fine, it's great and wonderful, but they don't have enough light to actually grow more. So we are
Interesting.
able to pause the plant that way for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And by doing so, actually reducing the power that is used, but also reducing the water consumption by a factor of 2 or 3. And there is a ton of technology and development behind this. You just in your app, you say, I'm on vacation, period. That's it. And in my mind,
I
that's
love
what
it.
technology should be. It should be
We have a
simple. It should simplify your life.
we have a final question before we break, and it's about the future going forward. Circadian rhythm, when you mentioned like in the evening going to sleep, I know that sometimes people want to have like circadian rhythm lighting. It sounds like what you're doing by having the dimming feature is you're in effect mimicking the circadian rhythm where we don't want to go to sleep with bright white light. We want to be dimmed down. Turn those cell phones off, 45 minutes before you go to bed, as opposed to just trying to,
Absolutely.
shut down. So is that the case that you
That,
can
that's
use
absolutely the,
dimming?
that's absolutely the case, and more to come on this. We're doing a lot of research because at the end of the day, our goal is not just to say we're going to produce lettuce, whatever it costs. That's not the point. The point is how do we find the right balance between growing food, but also giving you this mental health, amazing ambience and atmosphere. And the light is a big part of this.
Well, I'm going to close by saying, as an active user of Gardyn, I'm honored to have the founder and CEO, FX Roxel, here with us today. And I'm so pleased to hear about where you've come and how you're going with the evolution and the nuances where I'm learning things every time I engage with the company. So I encourage you listening to get online and really get one of these in your homes. We'll have the links available at the Future Food rightnow.com website to be able to click and get a promo code using the Future Food coupon for $100 discount. All adds up, and we want to extend that to you as our attendees to really encourage participation. So again, FX, thank you so much. Off
Thank
we
you.
go to the next presentation, and appreciate your time, FX.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm Charlie Serrati, and I grow superfood right at home, whether it's kale to microgreens. This Gardyn tower is one of the most advanced systems that I've seen because it automates the lighting and the watering system. I'm excited to open the Gardyn home device. This is an unboxing video, starting with just pulling the tabs out. Pretty exciting always to open new stuff, but this one is particularly exciting. Cover cardboard. And then remove me. Great. So these are some pieces that we will start to just lift up and out. That is a protective cardboard. I'm going to sort of toss those to the side. And then it looks like with these light bars, this is the second piece. We're going to set this one just down on the side. And then a kit that looks like it has some connections here with the base. I've seen those built, so I know kind of what that is. We're going to open this in a second. And then it looks like with the instructions, we're going to have those pieces there. More protective cardboard. So we just sort of slide that out. It looks like it's pretty well organized in terms of how it's all fit in here. Good, and this has a little extra piece that will reconnect once the assembly part starts. Same thing it looks like for this guy here. As we pull it out from the cardboard, we just want to be sensitive. There's a set of instructions on how to unpack this, and I've looked at them in advance, so I have a loose idea about the sequence. Basically, we're setting these things gently on the side. And then more of the protective packing cardboard that gets removed. This is the base, the actual tank. So that one comes out. I'm going to set this one aside right there. And then this, I believe, is the lid, the cover to the base, which has these bars in it, which hold basically the light system in place. So this piece I'm just going to set over here next to the base. Lots of parts. I got a little more parts than I had expected, but that's the reality. When you're building a system that can basically produce enough food for a family of 4 each month, it's no surprise that there's a lot of parts. And then we'll kind of time it to see how long it takes to really put this thing together. The last pieces are in here. That's a power supply, which is great for the lighting. More cardboard, and these are all just braces. So we did it. We got our parts out, and now we're going to dig into the assembly. Assembly of the columns. First thing we do is we look in any one of these slots here, and we make sure that the hose is running straight down. It's not all tangled up. We come to the bottom and we pull it. This is the connector that's basically going to tie into the pump system. The arrows are pretty straightforward because it shows you here that like that one is going to go here. If I can just hold this up, slide it in, and then rotate. So that means it's connected. And you can tell it's connected because you line up the different holes. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for these other two columns. And then we're going to check to see which one is the center column because it has a tie-off strap. Keeps it against the wall if you want to secure it. Mount and lock the lids. Okay, we're going to pop the cardboard out. Get this bad boy lifted up. You can really see what we're working with here. The underside of the Gardyn lid is very sophisticated. So this is where the water drains back down. This is where the pump pushes it back up. So there's 1, 2, 3 of those for the drainage. As it flows from the pump, there's the 3-way up to the top of the towers. When this is released down into the tank, that crimp goes away because this is dropped down, and the intake for the pump is drawing the water in there and pushing it up and into those towers. This is the fill hole, which is then used, periodically to add water, and the latches on the sides go into these spots from the base to hold it in place. Really, really nice design. It looks like there's this little extra cap piece. I want to make sure we don't lose any parts. Okay, then we go over to here. Packing tape. I'm going to peel this off both sides. Rotate that one around. Looks like to open, these little flaps come out, again, both sides, and there's a front and a back. The back has this cutout for the power supply, and that matches this power supply. Okay, so we're going to set this one in place here. We're going to close those lids. They're not really lids, but they're latches. And then it looks like we can remove and lower the water pump, which is, this is a foam piece. Pull that out. This has a little tab there, so we're going to lift and slide, and that just drops into place. Cool. That's packing piece. We don't need that anymore. Now the lid is secured. Connect the columns. We're going to start with the center column, which has at the very end that little strap to hold it against the wall. Each of these columns has the hose that draws the water up from the tank with the pump, and that's going to connect to that little plastic cylinder there, and we're going to line it up, each column with the arrow and the arrow. So I'm going to set this camera phone down here so I can hold the pieces in place, and then we're going to lift up the column and place this right over the head of that plastic connector. We're going to rotate so this goes into the place, and then just turn it so it's secure. Done. Here is the first of the light bars. You can see in there that it's got that sort of cavity that's going to receive the point part here. This is the one on the right that has the camera at the end, and right is indicated by, if you're facing the unit, the R. So this is going to slide right over the top, and the key here is just to line it up as carefully as possible. So what we do is we jiggle it sort of into position, and then slide it down and sort of click it into place, and we're going to do the same thing for the other one. So now that this is attached, the horizontal bar connects, just clips right in to both sides in the center. And then this little piece is what slides down from the top, and we just really jiggle it into place. And it's going to have that hole right there, which is going to keep the piece in place after we put the other horizontal struts across. Notice that these struts have that shaped piece that's going to fit right into the top of that light unit. The idea there is to jiggle that one into place, and then it comes across here and just fits right on this. Again, we're going to end up having the plug for the hole to tighten it all together at the end. Now that the blades are in place, we're going to take these little plastic plugs, just easily slide those in. Do the same so they hold the system in place, including the ones here for the blades on both sides of the unit. Checking the progress. 3 columns, done. Safety strap, yes, that is on the top. 2 LED light bars installed. Metal bar and upper blades, done. Protective caps, yes, those were put in at the top of the light bars. Water pump lowered into the tank. If you may remember, that is what we did here when we moved it across with that packing foam. Put that cap back on it. And then with the lid locks, these are the lid locks here. We just make sure they're shut. Okay, so we're going to be ready for the next step, which is really now we're starting to grow some plants. We're going to add the water. We're going to power this thing up. That is, by the way, on the back side here, the power button, and the supply for the electricity. And then we are going to put in the cubes, the Y pods, and then the cubes inside of them. Here is the box of the Y cubes, which have the different plants in them. There's the seeds to get started. If I open this up, you see that there's a little instruction note here, which has some steps. The key when you pull these out is to remove the top piece of cardboard, because that is just a protective cover for shipping, and each one is labeled. Like, for example, that is arugula. So these are ready to go to insert into the system. In each of the holes, you can take one of these Y pods, set it in, just turn it so it sets. You can see them right there. And just within a couple days, you start to see the growth come in. So really exciting to watch the tower come to life. A month of growth really starts to produce some yield. So we can see the kale that's really coming in nicely, some of the lettuce, and even for exotic things like you wouldn't expect tomatoes. Well, the flower is beginning to come, and that's going to produce the cherry tomatoes and herbs like dill.
And a privilege, and so thank you very much. Everything I'm going to say today, you can also find at wildfoodies.org. That's our website. So I really invite everyone to go there and see everything we have. It's chock full of information. I started the website to instruct people to share information. There's no cost to go into that website and learn all you can, because this is really a field where people are doing a lot of learning. There's a lot of new information coming on board every day. So it's a very vibrant field of study. So the first thing I want to say is, people ask, why wild foods? What's so important about them? And really the other question should be, the opposite should be, why not wild foods? Why don't we know what the foods all around us can do for us? It's really a big question why the schools aren't teaching what these plants that grow wild all around us, whether they're native or non-native, what can they do for us? Because they can do a lot. If I were to leave you with one thought today, that you should follow up on, is learn about plantain. And we're not talking about the banana. We're talking about what's called a weed that grows everywhere. And there are 2 kinds, broadleaf and narrowleaf. Broadleaf lasts almost all summer long throughout the warm months. But once it starts getting chilly, it starts to die back. But Narrow-leaf plantain is around all year long practically. And this plant, the plantain, is known as nature's medicine cabinet. It does so much. It's an extremely effective antibiotic, antifungal, antiseptic, expectorant. It even helps mitigate with radiation sickness. So this is a plant that our medical community should know everything about. When you hear on the news, oh, we're running low on antibiotics, nothing could be further from the truth. Plantain, otherwise known as plantago, is nature's antibiotic. It's very effective. I use it all the time. That said, you want to use it in moderate amounts. So you want to go to the website and learn all about it. So that's just off the bat. If you want to change channels and go to somebody else's webinar, that's fine. But learn about plantain. It is so important. So let's go on to, why we want to learn about wild foods, because it makes sense. It makes sense to know what nature can do for us. It's all well and good to protect nature and defend nature and admire nature. But if you don't know what nature can do for us or for you, then we're losing out. So that's what this is all about. It's not just about eating plants, but it's using them for medicine, fiber, and much more, much more. So we're learning all those kinds of things. So excuse me, we are in a pathway here on this webinar. So that's the important thing. And the other thing about learning about what wild plants can do for you is it's all about local self-reliance, because without local self-reliance, wherever you live in the world, without local self-reliance, you're dependent on others. Your security is threatened if you don't have some meaningful level of local self-reliance. And that's for food, fiber, medicine, everything. You want to be as self-reliant as possible within a narrow area. Here, of course, we all know we import everything practically. And that is really a recipe for disaster, because it not only makes you dependent and vulnerable, affects your security, but it also disconnects you from your environment, from each other. You lose skills, very important skills. So we don't want to be a consumer society. No society should want to be a consumer society. We should all be producing as much as we can, and as locally as we can in our own yard, in pots, to be able to forage in our local parks, that sort of thing. It's all very important. So it's fundamental to a healthy society to be able to be as self-reliant as you can be. And knowing about wild plants is really vital, and it's the foundation to all of that. Full disclosure, we are not a vegan or vegetarian group, but we do focus on plants. We also don't do much with mushrooms, only because we're lazy. And there are two really good local groups that address that issue. The Mycological Association of New Jersey, and there's a Mycological Association of Philadelphia as well. So those are great organizations that will give you information on mushrooms. So the other thing also is we really promote schools teaching this subject, from the grade, primary level, high school, and college. And really, as already noted by other speakers, doctors should know about these wild plants. Actually, there's a lot of plantain growing in Washington Square, near where I live. And I live in downtown Philly, strangely. And there's a lot of plantain growing in that square, but I guarantee you, almost none of the doctors know that work in this area, from Jefferson to Penn to Pennsylvania Hospital and the others know anything about what plantain can do for you. So that's why it's really important that we spread this information. It's not enough to eat right, but it's really important to know about wild edibles because they grow up differently. They grow up in a diverse environment, a more normal environment, which makes them healthier. Now, of course, you always do have to be concerned about pesticides and other contaminants. But that said, a plant or animal that grows up in a diverse environment, a natural environment, is a very different food source than a plant that's growing up in a monoculture. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so one thing we want to talk about also is when you're eating wild plants, that's what nature is offering. When you eat plants that are grown on farms, most of them are cultivars. In other words, it's selective breeding or hybridization or GMOs. It's been engineered some way or another. And there's never been a whole lot of studies as to how healthy these foods are for us anyway. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Also, when it comes to native versus non-native, the point I make is that we were all on one continent to begin with, Pangea, we meaning nature, life. And so the idea that we get concerned about invasive species is, I think, misdirected. Really, this is about evolution. Plants and animals and bacteria and viruses spread across the planet and really beyond this planet. So it's important to think of it that way, because if you think of it as an invasion and not evolution, what you're giving to the pesticide and chemical companies is license to go in for targeted spraying to eradicate, these weeds, and that's been a disaster. So we really want to learn how to use these new arrivals, not abuse them. So that's very important. And some of these wild plants have been here for hundreds of years. I mean, these non-natives, they've been here for hundreds of years. So it's really kind of ridiculous to think that we can take our environment back to the, 1700s or 1800s. That ship has sailed. We've moved on from there. And so it's really important to embrace the wild, whether native or non-native. So having gone through that. Okay, so the other thing is I do want to emphasize that I'm a wild foods enthusiast, not an expert. And I say that because that's the way I feel. I haven't done a lot of studies or science on this. I've read a lot of books and, and that sort of thing. And I link to important websites that have done important work. But I think it's important to not take on the mantle of expert, because it's really up to the individual to do their own due diligence, to read from multiple sources, and then find out what their own body can handle or adjust to or enjoys. So and on a practical basis, for liability purposes, I'm not an expert. I'm an enthusiast. It's up to you, to learn about this subject and find out what works for you. And the other thing also is, what to eat and what amounts. We always say, the big thing is know and go slow. So that's the go slow is really important, because I've had people say, oh, I ate a lot of that and I got a stomach ache. And I said, well, I didn't tell you to eat a lot of it. I said, go slow, small portions, and in a very slow, methodical way. Don't start mixing wild edibles together and then have a salad when you don't know what you might react to. So that's very important. The other thing also is get an app. I mean, I love technology. People think wild foodies, oh, we're off the grid and we do all kinds of things that are very primitive. Well, we do, but we also really appreciate technology. And plant ID apps are very important in this because a lot of these plants, they're not in these books. These books might, many books on foraging might cover 50, 100, maybe 200 plants, but there are many more than that. So it's really important to get an app. And I personally use Picture This. I like that, but other people use other apps. We have a page for that discusses that. So keep that in mind. So one of the things you can do today, download an app onto your phone, and then take a picture, get the name of the plant, and then go to pfaf.org. Now, all of this is on the front page of our website, wildfoodies.org. So pfaf.org is plantsforafuture.org. And they're kind of, not exactly, but kind of, not 100%, but kind of the gold standard for plant uses. And this is what I found out by looking at different websites. Is some websites are like PFAF, great on information, and eattheweeds.com, the Green Dean, he's great on giving full information in a story about the plant, but they're not so good on the photos. And there are other websites like Foraging Texas and Wild Edible Plants that are better with the photos, less information though. You know, it's just very compact information. But PFAF is the go-to website for all uses. So they start with edible, then they go to medicinal, and then they go to other uses. And that's really interesting too, because who knew persimmon trees are also considered, America's ebony. Who knew that? The wood is so hard, you can make a wedding ring out of that. So that information is also information we want to know. We want to know these other uses. A lot of these plants, fruits, roots, bark can be used for dyes, again, medicines, basketry, all kinds of things that are really important for us to know, and also for local self-reliance. Another thing so that's Know and Go Slow. Get an app. Also, we have a web page for reference information. It has all these websites listed. And then the other thing we did, and this is what I really strongly suggest, is that people download our master list. So I have a master list. It's not complete, but it's a master list of the plants you'll find in this area. It does not include the shore, although, so it doesn't include seaweed, although I would like to add that at some point. But if you download this master list, now these are all live links to plant profiles that I've put up. I mean, almost all the plant profiles are mine. Some of the links are directly to PFAF or another website, but most of them are plant profiles that I put up on those particular plants. And that's always a work in progress. But if you download that master list, then start circling the plants that you can already ID. And then just keep that up there. And the more plants you get to learn, you just keep circling them. And it gives you, it builds your confidence and lets you know you're advancing in your knowledge of these plants. Because the first thing you really want to do is be able to ID them. And then the second thing is to know, what do they taste like? How can you prepare them? Different uses for them. So get that master list, print it out, circle them. So the other thing is with that is, I'm seeing some of these chat things on the side, so that's like throwing me a little bit. I get distracted easily. The other thing to consider when you're eating these plants also is some plants like plantain is a blood thickener. It actually stops bleeding. So if you're out in the wild or in your kitchen, like I am slicing up my fingers, you can use plantain right away to stop bleeding. So it's a coagulant. But there are other plants like wild violet and long needle white pine that are blood thinners. They have vitamin C. So vitamin C is more of your blood thinner. Vitamin K's, your cruciferous or more of your blood thickeners. So you want to, no one ever talks about that in your diet. What's a blood thinner and what's a blood thickener? But it's really important because when you get into some of these things, it could cause a nosebleed. If you have too many blood thinners. And so that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is how do you use these plants? And we're just talking about food right now, or for medicine, let's say, is you can take plants and not only eat them and not only put them in a blender, like for instance, wild violet. That's easy. It's a great source of vitamin C. Put it in a blender, with water, sieve out the fiber, and make a pitcher of light green water, wild violet water. People are kind of not surprised to see rose water, but you can do, which is drinkable, rose petal water, but also wild violet. You can do the same thing with a dandelion leaf, Asiatic dayflower, all kinds of greens. You can just put a leaf in there and make a light green drink. And why would you want to do that? Because a lot of us filter our water. And when you, with osmosis or something like that. And when you do that, you kind of create dead water. So you want to put something back in. I don't have any science over, is this a great thing or not, or how much or whatever, but this is what I do, just to put a little something in there. And I do know that if I drink too much, I really tend to stay away from orange juice and those citrus juices. So because people think that's the only way you can get vitamin C, but no, you can get vitamin C from plants. So, and to me, it's kind of a safer way to absorb vitamin C without all that acid content. So you can do that. So you can make green drinks. You can put wild plants, depending on the plant. Some of them have to be cooked or dried, but others can be eaten fresh. So you can put them in salads and sandwiches and soups and things like that. So that's all, you kind of understand that. That's not difficult to understand. But what a lot of people miss is that you could also put these foods in your bath, because your skin is your biggest organ. So if you want to be absorbing good nutrition through your skin, you can do that by putting herbs in your bath. I would say for 20 years, I haven't used soaps or detergents for anything. Not in my baths, not in my laundry, not doing my dishes. I use herbs and and other food groups to do those. And so a typical bath for me would be a little bit, maybe this much of a plantain leaf, and blend it, sieve out the greens, put it in the bath. And then I finish off the bath with a little bit of duck fat as a moisturizer, because plantain is not a moisturizer. What plantain does is, you can make a spit poultice. So let's say you've injured yourself and, out in the wild, or you've run across stinging nettle or something like that. You can put the plantain in your mouth, chew it, and apply it. And what it does is it draws out toxins and pain and things like that. And it heals, draws out, dries up, and heals. And that's what it does. So I will even use it after dental surgery. I'll use it as a mouthwash if I feel like I've got some sort of sores in my mouth or anything like that. I'll use plantain for that. So there, but as far as outside skin and that sort of thing, you just want to keep that in mind. I also use chamomile quite a bit. So chamomile can be a very relaxing herb to put in your bath. So just keep all that in mind. that you can ingest through your mouth. You can also absorb nutrients through your skin in baths, and you can also breathe in. For instance, with mints, I'm not a huge fan of mints. It seems to cause an arthritic reaction in me, but I love the smell, and particularly mountain mint is my favorite, my absolute favorite. I love that because it's a musky kind of minty fragrance to it. And there's something to be said for just aromatherapy. And also with pollen. People view pollen as a bad thing, but really, the bodybuilders use pollen. So it depends, is pollen a problem or is it a nutrient? So you always want to think of those things. When we go for our walks, which is just so enjoyable. When I started this group, it was great because the nicest people show up from all sides of the political spectrum. They're very nice, they're open-minded, they want to learn, and no one trusts what they're eating. No one trusts the government, which is a good thing. I mean, you should always, have some doubt in your mind, your skepticism. But also when we go out, a lot of times we're going into the woods. And so the woods, I'm sure people at this webinar have heard of forest bathing. So the woods, the plants put off vapors, not just oxygen, but other things. Don't ask me what. But and so those are all very healthy. Just those vapors, just breathing in that. So that's another thing to keep in mind is, just what plants can do for you as far as just breathing in. Okay, so I'm going to just, okay. So now, the other thing, big thing is, we're all about, so it's no one goes show. No one goes slow, or you can show it, but no one goes slow. And then it's don't trust me and any one source, just do your own due diligence. The third thing is keep an open mind, because this is a very dynamic field. Things are always changing. I had no idea that a Virginia creeper, which is a vine, and it's berries, that the berries were edible. And I think that's new. I think that, because when I first looked up Virginia creeper, I'm pretty sure those berries were not edible. But now they say they're edible. Would I eat a lot of them? No. I might try, one, and see what happens. But PFAF is saying they're edible. So, so this is a very dynamic situation here. So even though, it's all about due diligence, don't trust, and keep an open mind, as in life. You always want to keep an open mind, and be prepared for new information or a new twist on things. And so with that, if we don't have any, if you have any questions, please, you can put it in the, well, we said the Q&A, but if that's not working, the chat box, I guess. But the other thing also I wanted to do is start with the screen share and go over some photos. So Charlie, is that okay?
That's absolutely great. Lynn,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to do the screen share. So we, I've gabbed long enough. So we'll do this screen share. And this is, I have a couple of these. This is the shorter version. This is Wild Foods Haute Cuisine, but it's really also about co-harvesting, because I gave this presentation to the, it's the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture. And I was really trying to show the farmers how they could do a co-harvest with the wild plants. So it doesn't have to be either or, cultivar or wild, it can be both. And, wild plants love cultivated fields, particularly amaranth. So we'll go over some of these pictures just to show you, but I have a much more detailed PFAF called Wild Foodies 101. Again, this is all on the front page. of the website. And so for you to learn from, and that covers most of the plants that are on the master list. So this is just, now this is the plants growing up between these rows of corn is amaranth. And amaranth is, that was, oh, I don't know, Aztecs, Incas, their most favored food and honored food was amaranth. In my neighborhood, I'm at 11th and Locust in downtown Philly. I found 3 types of amaranth growing in my neighborhood. And I think it's because the seeds are in muffins or something, but it grows up everywhere. And it's there are 3 different kinds, but amaranth is extremely nutritious. Now, that said, do I eat the amaranth I found on the street? Not really, but I do go to an Asian market and buy amaranth. And then I take the leaves and I dry them. And then I use them as needed in dishes, particularly if it's a rice dish or a rice dish or a potato, any kind of starchy dish. It's great. Or, I've also put it in salads. Oh, that's my son, along with dandelion. So you can, you can start foraging at your local grocery store is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to start out in the woods. You can just, for instance, I go to Organic Moms, which is a couple blocks away from me, and they sell dandelions. So I'll take the dandelions, I'll bring them home, I'll break them in half, I'll put them on a hanger, put them in the basement, let them dry, and then I just take it and take the, rub the dry leaf off of that and put it in a jar. Don't forget to label the jar. And then I use it all the time. I use it on salads. I use it everywhere. And although a lot of people say dandelions are bitter, and they can be if you eat them fresh, but if you dry them, then they're not bitter. And if you cook them, if you're going to put dandelions in water, then you might want to throw out the water once or twice if you don't want the bitterness. But if you dry them, then the bitterness just evaporates. It goes away. At least that's been my experience. But you can do the same thing with amaranth. So I go to a local Asian grocery store to get my amaranth. Now, I have this on the website, amaranth, even though the amaranth comes on its stem with the leaves, you don't want to eat the stem. Too much fiber. I've learned from personal experience, way too much fiber. And so just stick with the leaves. Don't do the stem because you'll pay big time for it later. So, but this amaranth is Monsanto, now known, Bayer, I guess, now owns Roundup. That's their #1 target. So the #1 superfood in South America that's now spread all over the world, our chemical pesticide industry, it's their #1 target. So what does that tell you? And what's healthier for you to eat, amaranth or corn? I think, corn is not that healthy, so it's really amaranth. Now, maybe the ancestor of corn, maize, maybe that is more healthy, but certainly not the corn we grow today. So that's something to keep in mind. You're finding a lot of wild edibles now in farmers markets, which is great. They go like hotcakes. People are very interested in them. And it's kind of strange because I've had a little bit of a problem getting some of our organic farmers locally to sell some of these wild plants. But you have to market them. You got to let them know this is how you use these plants. I mean, I wouldn't sell, not that Jerusalem artichoke is truly wild, because from what I can tell, it's not. But burdock root is, and both those plants can give you gas if not prepared correctly, or if it's just your digestive system. So some of these plants need to come with a warning on how to prepare them, and that's important. But organic farmers need to get with the program a lot more. because a lot of them are not embracing this. So they need to open their minds to the fact that these weeds are extremely nutritious and can be a very valuable co-harvest. And that's it. So here's some books. Here is that master list I was telling you about. These are all live links, and it's divided into plants, vines, trees, bushes, and trees. I have other things on the website that are divided into marsh plants and iffy edibles and things like that. But here's amaranth. It is delicious, but it needs to be thoroughly cooked. I've noticed some chefs like to just braise it. No, you really want to thoroughly cook it so you're not chewing for an hour. Lamb's quarter is another delicious wild edible, and it is good raw, but you can also cook it. So lamb's quarter is also called wild spinach, but amaranth also has a spinachy taste when cooked. Purslane, extremely popular in the Mediterranean area, is growing all over this area. Is anybody selling it? No, they're not. I don't get it. So this purslane loves the hot weather, loves dry conditions, and loves agriculture, and loves to grow between the rows. Chickweed is what's growing now. Chickweed likes the cold weather, the cooler weather, and it's delicious. Although I rather cook my chickweed and not eat it raw. It does have a lot of saponins in it, and when you hear saponins, think soap. So it's a bit much for me, but a lot of people like to eat it that way. Again, I would go slow with that. Dandelions and chicory both do a lot of the same thing. The whole plant is edible, except when it goes to seed, of course, but very delicious. I do want to say a lot of blossoms, they may not be edible. No, they may not taste as sweet as they normally would if bees have already taken the nectar out. So always keep that in mind. Bishop's gallweed, again, not sure how actually wild that is, but it does grow wild. So that is my parsley substitute. Love it. Chock full of vitamin C, and it's called goutweed because it prevents and cures gout. Really important. Okay, here's the plantain. This is the broadleaf, and this is the narrow leaf. And this is, again, I don't eat a lot of it. I use it medicinally. So I use small amounts and that sort of thing. I think I'm beginning to almost run out of time. Onion grass. A lot of people don't realize onion grass, which is actually garlic, wild garlic. But those little bulblets under the ground, the flower bulbs, the flower fruit, all of that is edible. And that's your wild onion. That's nature's onion, not the big fat things we see at the grocery store. Mugwort, another fantastic plant. Again, it's also called sagewort because it smells like sage. It can be treated like sage. It is an herb. You only eat that in small amounts. And so and it has other things. It's supposed to give you more lucid dreams. It does for me. I would go slow on that. I wouldn't do a lot of that. People use it, as dried and in little covers and that sort of thing to smell at night. But it also helps to expel parasites. So it not only makes food taste good, herbs in general, but many herbs, what they do is they make food safe. Many herbs are anti-parasital, and mugwort is one of them. It grows everywhere. Mugwort grows everywhere. This gives you some of the vegetables that come off the wild mustard plant, gives you some of that information. The mustard family and cress family, there's a member of their family growing all year round. So, this just gives you some of the pennycress, my favorite. You can find that in January, middle of the wintertime. You can find pennycress, delicious. And you can find it up on Lemon Hill. Docks and sorrels, they're all very good as well. Again, I wouldn't want to eat too much of them because they have oxalic acid in them. Patient stock you can eat and raw. Sunchokes, again, be very careful about the gas that might come from that. So, okay. And here's burdock root. Burdock root, is delicious, tastes a lot like artichoke. So I could go on, but I want to give any time for questions. I'm going to, also, I just want to add, the people look down, I think they look down on the ground for wild edibles. You also look up in the trees, maple leaves, all kinds of tree leaves are edible. You can eat those leaves, particularly the young leaves. So, we need to keep that in mind. And then sassafras is wonderful. Black locust, the white blossoms is one of the premier edible flowers. And then you have your spruce tips, chameleon, which is a new arrival, basically. It's a lot like a ginger. Black nightshade, which is your, which is in your nightshade family, but this is natural. This is wild. This grows up all over Philadelphia, and it is edible. And then you've got your Asian lemon and your paper mulberry, all edible. Again, you want to go slow, but mulberries are my favorite fruit. They grow wild. They're great. They're sweet, and easy to harvest. So, and last but not least, Rose of Sharon. Again, probably not a complete wild plant, but in the Rose of Sharon is hibiscus and mallow that do grow wild, but it's all edible. Yes, the leaves and the flowers. So something to keep in mind. This is my Philadelphia Inquirer article they wrote on me, where I'm proudly showing a burdock root I dug up, but not before I fell over on my rear end trying to get that darn thing out of the ground. But thank you. I'm going to stop share now. And, I think we're almost out of time, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Lynn, I have a question because the group from the Q&A, I don't see anything in the inbox, but it's really about phytoncides. So I've learned through working with the mainline nature guides that plants, trees in particular, emit phytoncides, which help prevent them from getting decay and bacteria on the leaves. And we breathe them in, part of that forest bathing, experience. So have you found studies that corroborate that maybe it helps the human immune system, just like it's helping the trees become more immune to disease?
That's a very interesting question, and no, I have not. I mean, I haven't gotten into that, but I will look into it. It's a very interesting question. I do want to add that we do have another tour guide. Her name is Lady Danny, and her background is with pharmaceuticals, and she also trained as a medicinal herbalist. So she does go into a lot more detail on these plants than I do. So I will bring that up with her and we'll look into that. That's very interesting.
Well, the reason it's so interesting is, in addition to getting food from the wild, just being outside for physical health, walking and exercising, they're finding with these longevity studies in the blue zones around the world that it's not like going to the gym or running some Olympic triathlon and lifting weights. It's 20 minutes a day, just getting your legs moving and your heart rate up a little bit. And so it's so healthy to just be outside. Foraging is a good excuse to be outside, right?
Yes,
So mental health, the idea of getting some clarity, putting down these screens that we all hold in our hand called smartphones, right? And just being outside, using your brain to identify things. What you said that I love, and I wrote it down here, is this whole idea of like the slow pace. It was know and go slow. So it's not like you have to go try and find lunch in the woods.
Right. No.
Learning, getting some mental clarity and a little bit of that meditation to just walk and see things, and then also breathe in the cleaner air. I believe the phytoncides do have some medical benefit that I've seen in studies to human immune system. And with COVID being, endemic now, where it's not going away, just being healthier cannot hurt.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting about COVID, because I prefer to think of COVID as what Amaranth is going through with the with it being sprayed all the time. Amaranth, particularly Palmer amaranth, which grows in Pennsylvania and is the most common that grows in these on farms. It's become pesticide resistant. And,
right.
and so I think of that COVID virus as a bioweapon. And so, and I don't think it's the first. So as we've been kind of exposed to these things and to just regular environmental toxins, we can develop more of a resistance within ourselves. So, I mean, in a way, it's a good thing. If you live in a plastic bubble or a glass house and never let yourself be exposed to anything, that's not good for your immune system. Your immune system wants to be exposed to things. But I think that the COVID is giving us a great opportunity to find out what does work, because I think what's called long COVID. A lot of people do, and it's this mucus production, excess mucus production. And so you're hearing a lot of people clearing their throat a lot. And because the body's always kind of on high alert. And so then I know what foods might trigger it more, make it worse, and what foods lessen it, like plantain seems to lessen it. Do I want to eat a lot of plantain, which is a coagulant? No, I don't. But, so we're kind of learning how to react to these things. By the way, one of the natural remedies for COVID was Sweet Annie, which is a mugwort. And I remember reading that, particularly in Africa, they were using Sweet Annie in teas. So, and that's an anti-parasital, anti-malaria type of tea. So they also were recommending dandelion tea and white pine needle tea. So I think to me, I'd rather take a chance with nature than with a pill that I don't know who made it, where they made it, how they made it. I'd rather experiment with that. And, although I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, I do feel like dairy is not a good thing at all. And glutens. So I'm very much a no dairy, no gluten kind of person. And I do think that meat or fish should be minimized at the very least. So this was a thrill. Thanks a lot.
My name is Richard Campbell. I'm president of the Geological Agriculture Institute. We're an operation located out of Miami, Florida. Geological agriculture is the study of growing plants and rocks without soil and fertilizer. And our cover page kind of introduces GeoAg to you right at the opening. It's a demonstration of what happens when you put certain microgreens and a gladiola bulb on rocks after 12 days to see their type of growth. So this cover is designed to introduce you to another form of agriculture and kind of show you it in operation. But let's first talk about the current soil situation. What do we know about what's happening with soil? There's depletion. Soil depletes, requiring ongoing effort to annual purchasing of new soil to grow plants and have gardens. So every year we're going out to Home Depot and Lowe's to buy soil each and every time for our plots. Lack of soil in urban areas is also a challenge. Chemicals in our soil, fertilizers, are harming the environment and causing the ground and the seas to be contaminated, as we know. The pollution, acid rain, and human pollution also contaminating the soil, making soil harder to grow in. Food insecurity. Food deserts are found virtually everywhere in America, largely due to the lack of really good soil in cities now, which really doesn't exist heavily as once did. Malnutrition. Soil is really causing foods that have a lack of nutrition in foods, causing malnutrition and other issues. Then there are the ponics. The hydroponics and aquaponics systems are good. They're very expensive and also limited on what they can grow. Consequently, we have the brown thumb mentality or theology, where soil has become so tough that many have concluded to have a brown thumb. Then there are the bugs. That's a really interesting thing. It's more than just the bugs in the soil that are contaminating and hurting the soil's disease. Communities are looking to insects and bugs to solve the food problem. So that's kind of a weird thing that's happening as a relate of food and future food, is that there's this big insect and bug community where researchers want you to consume bugs. And then outer space. You know, the soil and the threat of losing soil and the threat of chemical fertilizers, the things that we've cited above, are having some to think that we should be looking at outer space for our food sustainability and life sustainability purposes. So with an environment that's only has soil as your growing medium, this is all a correct reality that we are currently living in throughout the world. However, something new is around the corner. But thanks to this book, Riverstones Grow Plants, there is another way. The new book of rocks has become a way forward. So this book right here is the official textbook of geological agriculture. It's your personal guide to GeoAg, the study of growing plants in rocks without the use of soil and fertilizer. So if you really want to know what's happening with GeoAg, you want to download this book at our website to soilless.com. Then you can understand what's happening. And we're going to give you a few highlights now as we kind of understand. But already, all of the pictures that you see here are of plants growing 100% in rock, from sunflower to lettuce to iris to tomatoes, pea shoot microgreens, squash, Asiatic lily, and more pea shoot microgreens. Now, about the book, came out in 2017. It represents our patented 25-year history of GeoAg. So for our family as a hobby, it began in 1994. But this book came out in 2017. And so we've also patented this research. However, in purchasing the book, you're able to use the patent at home for do-it-yourself purposes. It's also used as the primary education textbook of GeoAg at over 20 universities in the United States, and we'll look at who they are and what they're doing. Again, represents how you should do it at home. There's indoor chapter and outdoor chapter. And again, you want to get that at the website. This is how you figure out to use rock properly in your own environment. Now, one thing about rock is about 50% of the rules of gardening change when using rock versus soil. So you don't want to guess what the changes are. You just want to get the book and know what the changes are. But some of the changes, just give you one example of a change. In soil, soil roots grow deep, long, looking for food, like in this picture here. However, in rock, now the reason roots grow long and skinny and hairy is that they're looking for food and they kind of expand out, consuming food along the way, growing deeper into the ground, looking for more food. So you have these long root systems. In rock, since rock is a pure mineral, the roots don't have to go that far. So roots grow short, thick, and bald, not long, skinny, and hairy. So the shorter root ends up with a different plant from a physiological perspective. But that's one critical difference is that the root dynamic is different. So if the root dynamic is different, so then it's going to be the different aspects of your plant from what you're used to. Yes, you're going to get mature plants that are great to eat, but the process is going to be slightly different, and that's what we have to explain to you in the book. Now, when you look at who's using this book across America, these are some of the universities and also the professors and their particular area of research. With GeoAg being novel or new area of research, it cuts across many other areas of research, such as horticulture plants, livestock feed. Most of your farming animals consume plant products. So we're able to grow plants and rocks for farming animals. Then you have your field crops in your greenhouse. You have those professors like at Delaware State who look at the business side and trade and economy related to GeoAg, or Morehouse School of Medicine look at cancer research. Savannah State University, they look at the GeoAg environmental science. So all up and down the East Coast, these professors are using the same textbook to explore other areas of research with the theories of geological agriculture, educating their students, teaching students GeoAg in the classroom. Now, our organization, a club of researchers, is called the AGAR, the Academic Association of GeoAg Researchers, which makes up our list of volunteer faculty members from the United States and around the world. We have about 15 affiliate researchers across 15 universities on the continent of Africa. So here you see where, in terms of which country, our footprint in Africa related to those who are using this book to relook at rock themselves all over the world. And we all work together as a collective research team. Now, the definition of geological agriculture, that's the buildup. The definition is the study and application of cultivating seeds to maturity in geological formation or rocks without the use of soil and fertilizers, indoors and outdoors permanently. Indoors means we're separate than traditional farming approaches. Outdoors means that we're separate than hydroponic and aquaponic approaches. Permanently means that the growing medium of rock itself is capable of permanently growing your plants. And here's an example of how we retrofit recycled plastic to be your permanent growing medium, the short form growing plants and rocks without soil and fertilizer. Now we look at some of the benefits that we achieve with GeoAg, which are significant. Each one of these benefits have their own margins of profitability when looking at farming or home gardening, personal gardening, commercial gardening or farming, such as no soil use. Soil is, as we know, depletes, requiring purchases every year. No fertilizer use, because rock itself is the mineral that provides the minerals for the plant when configured properly. You don't want to mess around with the configuration. Just go to the book, and it teaches the configuration protocols for making sure you achieve predictability in growing your plants. Less watering required. Water cannot go through a rock. So you see these containers here. When you pour water through it, the water can't go through the rock. So you're going to have less water needs because the rock needs to be moist. Auto composting means that what grows in rock dies in rock. It composts on its own, improving the ecosystem. So it's not like soil that depletes after every use. First and foremost, rock is a 50-million-year-old substance, so it's durable, lifelong use in terms of our 100-year lifespan. And what's happening with the rock, with the water, and the plant doesn't affect the integrity of the rock unless you crush it to dust. There is an area of science called agrogeology that crushes rock to dust and uses that dust rock on soil. However, that takes a 50-million-year-old substance and crushes it to something that can only be used one time. Cost efficient, rock is very inexpensive at the local hardware store and nursery. Variable nutrient release means that one rock type will issue a different nutrient mineral release signature than another, meaning that one rock will put out maybe 20% potassium and another rock could put out 1,000% potassium, affecting plant growth and dynamics. Sustainable, because the rock is safe. It's part of our planet. We grew up with the rock. Reliable access to green space, high nutritional values when tested, and a stable growing medium. Scalable, because there's more rock on the planet than soil. We just need to know how to use rock. And that's what we kind of go through in the book, kind of how to do it to make it work for you. Now, every year we have conferences. This is our first conference in 2021 at Bronx Community College. Our second conference also in 2021 at Morgan State. And both of these conferences were sponsored by USDA NIFA. We do a lot in the food deserts. And so we work with the schools in the food desert. So this school is in Baltimore. Bronx Community College obviously is New York. Let's see here. In Florida, another food desert of Miami, is Florida Memorial University, who hosted our conference in 2022 and in 2023. But you can see here, the number of our speakers is gaining. And you saw from our prior slide, the areas of research that different researchers are doing with GeoAg. Here is a kind of an in-depth look at just some of the titles that our researchers looking at. GeoAg under the microscope, GeoAg isotopes, real scientific stuff, but all to redefine rock and food for the purposes of human and animals. Here is our 2023 lineup, now up to 29 speakers who joined us this year. When we look at other things that we're growing, now that we understand how to use it, we can grow and produce all types of future food now, such as cucumbers, lettuce, tomatoes. We have squash, and even the bees are enjoying the fruits of the rock labors. We have indoor systems again and outdoor. To the right is what we would call a modern home garden. Small, not a lot of area, but can produce a lot of food for you. And that's a lifetime garden. You can, once you set up the layers, under that rock on the right are these different layers and barriers of irrigation and fabric and these different layers, simple hardware store layers of information that you put under the rock to separate the rock from the soil completely, so you don't have any soil contamination in the rock bed. And so the rock system sits on top of the soil, but under the rock, it's this multi-layered irrigation and weed prevention programming that is there to allow the moisture to rise up, weeds to be eliminated, and also separation from the soil. So you want to get the book, and that's chapter 3 in the book that really looks at the outdoor GeoAg experience. More of the things that we're growing in rocks. You see here, we've got our cucumbers, and this is my second floor window. So this vined all the way up to the second floor window when we were growing these cucumbers, a fistful of cucumbers here. This basil grew about 2.5, 3 feet tall. Our cherry tomatoes every year grow really tall, over 10 feet. And then a good thing about rock is that when a plant, when you miss a harvest of something like a tomato, they fall into the rock and reseed itself. So we're great on volunteers and in the system, because the rock is on top of this multi-layered structure. All of that compost, whether the seed or compost, stays and get very good nitrogen recycling in the system. Other plants growing in rock, from the cilantro to the beans and wildflowers and okra and roses and kale and corn. And then our engineers at our universities, they just design new indoor systems for your home to make it really easy for you. And when you get these systems, you get the book, and the book is your instruction manual sorts for using GeoAg. We've got a lot of programs with kids who, when they grow plants, they then draw them. So there's this big kid interaction. The kids really become involved when taught rocks. And then we have our testing. We test at the largest universities in the United States that have agriculture testing labs. So these are the top 5 institutions in America, USDA approved and funded labs, where we send our water samples to understand the mineral value of rock as well as our plant samples. And in about 4 minutes, we're going to get to a point where we'll start the Q&A to between 10:30 and 10:40. And so I'll just zoom through this a little bit. Here is where we look. This is where we say we are meat scientists and we meet the health professionals. This is what we call our universal translator. So what this is this is how we test rocks. This is where we take a rock, put it in water, and compare it to a base water in a control group, experiment group. And we test the water. I would do irrigation tests. And that irrigation test gives you the parts per million of the elements of the elemental table. And that's where we meet science, back at the elemental table, aluminum, boron, calcium, et cetera, in blue. And so the top chart represents the specific test results of the mineral diffusion of 6 different rocks, 3 from the United States, 3 from Africa, so that we could look at and see just what type of mineral value is coming out of these rocks. The bottom chart is the percent change from base water, and it gives you a perspective of how much of a specific element is being added to that water by that rock. And this is also referred to as our smoking knob. This is our ta-da. We now can clearly identify the mineral value of all rocks. So much so that we can now match a rock to your blood type to grow your food based on your deficiencies of your body. Interesting thing to note here is potassium, which is very well known in the both agriculture space and human health space. If you look down at the bottom chart in green, you see that 28% for potassium. That means that new 28% of potassium ions entered the water when it was impacted by that Maryland rock. Now, this Maryland rock in question is the same rock of the plants used in this presentation. What else do we notice? That all the rest of the rocks' potassium output is different, higher, much higher. And yes, the correlation to your plant is a direct correlation. The higher the mineral value of your rock, the higher the nutritional value of your plant. So this is just some of the testing results that we go through to get a label on every rock. So we assign as an organization nutritional labels for your rocks. And then we do the same testing for the plants that we grow in rocks, so that we can understand the mineral value, the nutritional value of the plants themselves, so that we also can provide a nutritional value for the plants growing in the rocks. And basically, normal, good, and high. The dark green at the bottom and the light green show you where it's high for that mineral value. Everything's normal for satisfactory. Where it's red, like in our corn, we do see sometimes our corn is a little light on the heftiness, but we do remember, so we do see the corn and we grow corn, but that's because the rock does lack a little bit of nitrogen, at least for the corn's intake. For other plants, as we see, like with those tomatoes, and it's normal, and the beans. But now that also means we know exactly what to add to a growing environment should we need to do that for, say, commercial purposes. When we look at the Sustainability Development Goals, the United Nations is working with us to kick this off in Namibia. And so here are places that we can address in terms of poverty, hunger, good health, quality education. You see a lot of that education piece woven in to a lot of the presentation today. It's really all about the water and its effect on rock. It's also a big water rock world. We call it geological water, or GEOA. Number 7 looks at energy. And for us, we have a whole big world of geological energy called GEON. So there are actually 4 sciences: geological water, geological agriculture, geological energy, and geological medicine, GeoMed, all leading to work growth. We have a variety of programs, like you saw with that window, working on infrastructure to build sustainable communities, as well as responsible consumption, as you see, the reuse of plastic, helping the climate with reduced chemicalization, really, of the water runoff problems, and improving our overall life on land, and where we partner, as you see, with many sustainability organizations, academic researchers, to achieve the goals. And then when you look at what type of programming and services are there going forward that our university researchers are working on and patenting new ways, this is like what we call our cheesesteak factory list of different applications of geological agriculture: climate change mitigation, to social equity, to infrastructure, education, green jobs, training, and placement. And so this kind of opens up the world of geoag that we see occurring up and down the East Coast and throughout Africa, to create this future food reality. And so you want to contact us if you want to work with us. Otherwise, you want to download the book, River Stones Grow Plants, so you can do it yourself and have that authority to do so. We are a registered trademark. The word geological agriculture is a registered word, and the research, again, is patented. We do certify you in different applications. As you can see with our university professor list, there are a lot of different type of certifications to be exposed to and enjoy. And so now we're right at 10:33. I think I have about 7 minutes left. If there are any questions right here before I end, this is our pea shoot microgreens, one of our favorite plants to teach you about early on when we do the GeoAgriculture program. Very strong anti-carcinogenic plant, grows very fast at about 1 inch a day once it breaks the surface. And then to the right, of course, we have our cucumbers. You can recognize those leaves for all you avid gardeners out there, and the avid gardeners would recognize the pea shoots in the pea family. And of course, one of our favorite attributes of geological agriculture is the recycling piece. So as we train and teach people how to use rock to better sustain themselves, we're always making sure to add the recycling piece so that that doesn't end up in the whale's belly in the middle of the ocean, or as part of that floating island of plastic yuck. And so my name is Richard Campbell. I will stop here. There's our website. Thank you very much for your time. Welcome to the world of geological agriculture.
Richard, thanks so much. We still do have a couple minutes. If you want to ask a question, you're just going to use the little Q&A area down across the bottom there, and we'll hang around here till around 10:40, and then we break, and then we'll just pick up our next session.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just talk about the type of research that our community of faculty members are engaged in. We'll start over, I guess, to the far right. At Morgan State University, that's the team that's really running our engineering and architecture program. They're designing a variety of systems for the home and for the built environment. So they've got a refrigerator unit, they have a window unit, They have a rooftop terrace unit that they put in design. They also got a GeoAg chicken feeder, chicken in collaboration with Tennessee State. They're big livestock folks there for GeoAg. They designed a chicken feeder that grows wheatgrass for chickens. Turns out that chickens are a big fan of wheatgrass. So also at Morgan State, that's where we look at some of our aerospace programming. At first, rocks. The entire solar system is made of rock. The other planets are its cousins, and so the study of rock elsewhere is one area. Also using rock as a source for the astronauts. So designing rock-powered based systems to feed astronauts on the space shuttle and in the biodomes. At Florida Memorial University down here in Florida, it's a lot of tropical research. Big right now, really excited about is to be able to grow palm trees in rocks. So we've just posted on our Instagram, which is the same to Soilless. You'll see our palm tree, which is about 2 months old, but it looks really nice. And so what we love is our palm tree program. We also have a 6-foot tall palm tree also on our Instagram. So that's a Chinese fan palm tree. And so we're also growing mango trees down here in Florida, in rocks. And so we're really excited. Those types of advancements assist those industries in their development. Bronx Community College is really our big food desert, urban nutrition programming, a lot dealing with malnutrition and the adverse effects of food deserts. Over at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, it's the bioplastics and the chemistry. A lot of what we're doing, we use recycled plastic, but that was intended for something else. And so we look at the plants that grow in rock for bioplastic purposes. And then 2, we look at designing other containers specifically for rocks that are not retrofits of other containers. And so I think that we've got 2 minutes left. And so in that time, we'll just look at some of our things that we've been growing in rocks to get some examples of future food. A lot of the food is sweet, strong taste. And the good thing about how we engage is we show you the indoor version first so that you can sustain yourself quickly. And then the outdoor version for the longer term. In a lot of parts of the country this time of year, outdoor becomes obsolete because of weather. And so we urge folks to get the book and understand GeoAg for the winter time so that you can achieve your own version of sustainability at your home. All right, guys, we are approaching 10:40. Again, my name is Richard Campbell. Feel free to contact us to learn more or download the book, Riverstones Grow Plants, to apply geological agriculture in your environment.
Richard, thanks so much. This was incredible. I'm sitting here just I'm like, oh my God, this is we are living in the future.
It's been really awesome hearing all the conversation here at the Future Food Right Now conference. Like you, I find talking to folks and being passionate about our mission and solving these our world's nutrition and environmental challenges, that sometimes we find the conversation so vast, it's hard to get our hands around it, it's hard to distill it down to some basic messaging that where folks can understand. I, as a passionate farmer, have a deep experience, like many of you, in a whole wide range of farming, from a commercial aquaponic farm I ran for a number of years, feeding colleges and a number of restaurants throughout the region, to my studies in how we cure our world's most daunting environmental challenges. But I'm going to share with you a little perspective that's going to distill down our challenges to some interesting historical roots into a population of folks that can not only warrant and appreciate all of your brain's attention and help, but also shed some light into a little bit of history and some stats into a population that is very dear to me. 1% of the nation's population serves in our military. Only 7% of Americans want to serve, and 25% of Americans that want to serve are disqualified from service because they're out of shape, too overweight, a whole range of health problems. Their 25% are also disqualified for other mental conditions, even taking drugs at one time for not feeling so great about yourself. 87% of Americans think that veterans are homeless, disabled, drug addicts, or bums. It's a problem. Of that 1% that is served, the 18 million veterans and a few million first responders, 78% of we fellow veterans are obese or overweight, and have 20% higher chronic illnesses than the civilian population. My name is John New. I served our nation's military as a young infantry officer, deploying a few times to countries in need and helping those in need. I wore Kevlar, a flak vest, a bulletproof vest, drove around in heavily armored Humvees, had snipers by my side, a rifle by my side, many folks making sure we were okay. I made sure that my soldiers came home alive. And when they came back, like my dad, like my grandfather, that's right, I'm a third generation dumb infantry guy, I was like every other veteran. I ate crap. I ate crap before the military, I ate crap during the military, go out with a bag of licorice, we're issued MREs and folks you see here, and I didn't know. On a mission to help 1 million fellow vets and first responders live healthier and better lives. How did we get here? Interestingly, part of our shift in how we all eat was accelerated and driven by our nation's history at war. During World War I, with hundreds of thousands, millions of soldiers deployed, American, British, all of our allies, when you're in a trench line in the middle of the mud, you can't have Johnny and Jane delivering about a bushel of fresh apples. They'll decay, they won't be preserved, they won't even make it there. So we had to learn to do this. We learned how to can and process food to endure and last for a very long time, completely contradicting what we all know and are passionate about, that the old adage, the longer your food will live, the shorter you will. The shorter your food will live, the longer you will. I, in the modern American Army, ate, expect to see in one of these slides here, MREs, meals ready to eat. The soldiers I'm referring to back in World War I and World War II began with C rations, canned, T-rats, and others. During World War I, we met the needs of preparing these foods. And then we kind of recessed back and okay, we're all good. We're hopefully always at peace. And we'll kind of go back to our agrarian roots. We'll go back to picking out a good old radish from our yard and back to our supermarkets. And then World War II happened. And we said, oh, goodness gracious, it lasted longer. It was much more robust. And we got to do a lot of things. We got to step our game up in beyond tanks and airplanes. We got to learn how to really advance technology in taking food from the earth and putting it and preserving it into cans. And then when we came back, we had this entire industrial complex built around preserving and canning foods. And then the marketing machine happened. We started talking and compelling folks when Johnny and Jane came back from war on how it's more convenient, how it's easier, and I won't mention certain brands, but how you get dried milk to good old dried pasta to whole meals, frozen, dry packaged good, to just make it more convenient, more well preserved, and easier for you to eat. Hence, where we are now. Fortunately, my favorite veteran, my father, is no longer with us. My dad, John Arnoux Sr., served 34 years in the United States Army, began his time as an enlisted grunt in the jungles of Vietnam. The rest of his time retired as a full bird colonel. I love my dad. It means the world to me. But he was 3 to 4 months pregnant for 30 plus years. Case of men, it's devastating to our bodies. He mocked me and didn't totally understand that what he put in his mouth impacted what happened throughout his entire body. How do we get through to him? How do we get through to a million other fellow boneheads like me and my dad, no longer with us? A few years older than the age I am now, his mid-50s, my dad had his first heart attack. Then, a decade or two of diabetes, liver disease, second heart attack in 2017, and eventually liver failure and cancer took his life this April. As I began, the problem, the challenge in front of all of us is so daunting, it's hard to know where to start. So one of the things we learned in the military is the KISS principle. Keep it simple and stupid. I like to be polite and call it straightforward. So in my studies and dozens of neuroscience books on how the human brain works and how our bodies work, and working with a lot of doctors, I stopped them every single time when we got over the 3 syllables or obscure terminology that I didn't understand. Because it's no good if it's not understood. So we're starting with a manual, very familiar to we soldiers and sailors and airmen, on distilling any concept, from an F-16 fighter plane to a tank that I drove around, to a missile system, to a good old tent. You start with the basics. You break down every concept into its basic elements. That's what we've done. 98 Octane is a metaphor that we pay more attention to what we put in our cars, our lawnmowers, our chainsaws, than we do in this machine. The only one we have. The average American has 7 cars over the course of one's life. We get one of these vehicles. Simple metaphor broken into 6 basic components. Gut gas tank, heart engine, computer brain, belts and hoses, ligaments, chassis, the musculoskeletal system, and fluids. And each section is distilled into bite-sized pieces, beginning with, as an example, bottom line up front. The 50-100 rule. What's that? More than 50 grams of sugar a day and 100 grams of carbs. Easy things to remember in measurements that I never knew were important. We've also learned through a number of things that we're all students of, from the blue zones to others, that we humans are social. We crave for one another, we need one another, and we're also more accountable when we have inputs and eyes on one another. We've learned the same thing in the military. One point in time, the United States Army, about a decade or 2 ago, hired 117 psychologists. Here's what they learned. Number 3, soldiers and sailors fight for the country. Number 2, they fight for their unit. Number 1, you fight for your buddy to your left or right. From the Roman legions, the modern American army, 15,000 person division is broken down into smaller units, brigades, battalions, companies, platoons, down to 3 to 5 person fire teams. That's how we're going to win. In helping impact 1 million fellow veterans, we're starting with the basic elements. John, Jane, Joey, Timmy, and Tommy throughout the country are going to help one another reverse these appalling trends of dying more rapidly from the stuff we put in our yappers than the bullets and bombs we shielded ourselves from hurting ourselves. And appallingly, Dad did a daggone good job of coming home alive, but wasn't able to understand just how vitally important what we've all been talking about this conference. It's so important to all of us in growing food that is good for our planet, that is good for us, and good for the most important people in my universe, those who have served to protect us and our way of life. It's now our time to help them. There are 57,000 veteran service organizations in the United States of America. I know many of them. Well, I don't know many of them. I work with a lot of them. About a decade ago, I personally co-founded this nation's first veteran Shark Tank in helping fellow vets contribute to this great economy and this great nation through building businesses. This is my life's calling and our legacy. And that is to impact how every vet wakes up each morning, puts their 2 feet on the ground, and lives the best life they can. Pain-free, maximum mobility, maximum clarity, walking their sons and daughters down the aisles. That is what we fought for. That freedom of movement, the freedom of pain, is what's so important to all of us. Lastly, I'd like to share that part of the 87% of Americans who view us as homeless, wounded, broken, a mess, PTSD, some of it, and most of it, isn't all our fault. I watch the same commercials you do of the Wounded Warrior campaigns and our sisters and brethren who have unfortunately paid the closest you can to the ultimate sacrifice of one's life, of losing limb and other major functions, tormented by what they go through. But as we all know, we discussed this conference, the crisis that plagues all of us is a little more complex than that. It's the same for veterans. As many of you know, 95% of the serotonin that's in here starts in here. The gut-brain connection is very real. And acknowledging and addressing that food is thy medicine, and starting with that and identifying how we serve it and how we get it to them is part of our mission. I'd love to interact with each and every one of you to help achieve our mission of helping 1 million fellow vets and first responders. We're starting small. As we in the infantry say, it's left foot in front of the right, that the 1,000-step journey starts with 1 step. So we're beginning this February, launching on this Veterans Day, 11/11/23. This February will be our first 98 Academy. We start with, we call it train-a-trainer model, where we train fire team leaders to understand the basics of what we all get, to handle the objections, to handle when Joey, Jane, Tommy, and Tony are yapping and complaining and about all the excuses they have on why they can't do it. We have to build real long-lasting staying power for this movement to get to where we need to go. I want to thank you for just having me part of this incredible conference, and look forward to many more to come, and as it grows into what we all aspire to have a really lasting impact.
Today, we are talking about future food right at home by growing microgreens in rocks. And this is an exciting opportunity. As I click through these, I will share with you the concept of rocks and microgreens. First, a little background. I'm the president of the Agrarian Group. I have a master's of architecture from the University of Pennsylvania, coming up on now 30 years ago. I'm one of the instructors for studentfarmers.org, and I have multiple prior elected positions as a board member of the Sustainable Business Network. I'm also the founder and editor since 2007 for Green and Save, and the author of the book on sustainable design, Learn from Looking. The future of food can be multiple things: fresh, local, healthy, affordable, and sustainable. Those are key because it's very rare in life that so many things come from one kind of initiative. Here's some problems to solve, and we're going to start with some of the research. Unhealthy America. Obesity in the US, really staggering numbers. 19.7 children and adolescents have some level of obesity. 41.9% of adults. Those are scary numbers, and they're trending in the wrong direction. Here's another problem to solve. Long distance from farm to table. 90% of US lettuce comes from California and Arizona. That's way too far, because what happens is the nutrients are lost in transit, and it adds cost, environmental cost, in the form of carbon dioxide output. Nutrient loss I referenced, 46% loss of key nutrients for vegetables, such as lettuce, within 7 days of the cold storage in transit. Food safety. Leafy greens have more potential to give you E. coli than meat in the US. That's surprising to a lot of people. The proximity to livestock feedlots and less inspectors from the FDA than meat inspectors from the USDA means lettuce and leafy greens get less attention. We also have a challenge with food deserts. 23.5 million Americans, that's 7%, live in low-income areas farther than 1 mile to a large grocery store. Of these people, 11.5 million have low incomes. Truly a problem to solve. Okay, additional research. The immune system. People with a plant-based diet are 73% less likely to experience moderate to severe COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 may become endemic, where we really don't get rid of it altogether. It becomes like the flu. Well, people with a plant or fish-based diet also are benefiting. They have 59% less likelihood to get seriously ill than people on a combination of meat-based diets. Additional problem, climate change. 24% of greenhouse gas emissions, the GHG, comes mostly from agriculture. That's the cultivation of crops and livestock and deforestation. Truly something that we have to address. It's a staggeringly high number relative to people's perception. As an example, here's the chart where I pulled the bubble around the 24% compared to transportation, which is only 14%. Well, the breakdown of climate change, simple. Production of food contributes more to climate change than the cars we drive. I happen to have an electric car, happen to have a solar house, all great. I'm not saying don't do those things, but if we do all those things like solar and electric vehicles, but we don't address food, we haven't solved one of the biggest problems. There's some good news. So all that is sort of the story that we've heard over the years, and you may know some of those statistics from prior presentations. Here's the good news. We don't have to wait for governments to fix the problem. We can grow local, and we can grow indoors. Now, here's the opportunity research. Flipping the table, right? Turning the tide on the good news. Local indoor vertical farming. 2 key advantages of local indoor farming over traditional outdoor field farming. Number 1, 10 to 20 times more yield per acre. Not double, 10 to 20 times. 70% to 90% less water. The reason the water is so important is we're facing a water, energy, food security nexus. And drinking water, fresh water that's used for all this irrigation, is going to be more and more scarce, especially in areas like California, where we're draining it from other aquifers and resources. Okay, solution number one, high-tech commercial indoor farming. We don't have to use the fields. We know from some of the statistics that the indoor farming uses less water, and it can be a yield that's higher per acre of coverage space. So controlled environment agriculture, CEA, is one of the top solutions. This is a diagram of a perpetual food machine, something I've worked on for multiple years. You use the sun to power the LED lights. You can have a greenhouse on the roof of a building which uses the free sun to grow the plants. You can collect the rainwater into containers so that you're not draining the aquifers. You can use smart intelligence with AI to control the systems, and you can use fish and fish waste through aquaponics to feed the nutrients needed into the plants. You can also then grow on those grow racks algae, all kinds of food that say the herbivore fish like the tilapia may eat. You can store with batteries, or you can have bio-waste reactors to gasify energy and take food waste and human waste and turn it into energy to power the system in addition to the solar or the wind. So it's going to be real. It's going to happen. I had the great pleasure of being invited down to Kennedy Space Center in NASA's home base to talk about the Mars shot and specifically how to use a perpetual food machine to colonize another planet. Doesn't mean we have to go there right away. It might be a decade, but we can do it in the food deserts, because the food desert to me is just like Mars. It's isolated and it needs help. Here's the second solution: lab tech manufactured foods. These are the engineered food. Laboratory foods might include mushrooms for bacon-like food or seaweed for protein substitutes, insects for ground up food additives, to other food. I mean, this is exciting opportunity for business, commerce, and human health to really start to explore what is out there beyond what is naturally growing. We have to be careful, like in anything, that we don't create a whole nother catastrophe in terms of complexity. But the reality is the science is behind it for us to help engineer food. Solution number three, and this is my favorite of the three, the do-it-yourself DIY at home, and the focus of this conversation today, homegrown microgreens. Well, this superfood has the benefits of bat mix. So broccoli, as an example, heart health, digestion, the immune system, and cancer prevention. With arugula, sports performance, blood pressure reduction, cancer prevention, vision protection, the list keeps going on, wound healing, liver detox, and prevention of bad breath and body odor. Great, all good things. Turnip, healthy skin and hair, reduced anemia, osteoporosis prevention, cancer and diabetes prevention and treatment, and improved digestion, sleep, mood, and even sun-damaged skin. So hard to imagine anything that like the pharmaceutical industry could produce that would do all these things so easily and affordably as growing some microgreens. Homegrown microgreens in rocks. Well, here's what's interesting. Rocks have nutrients, so it's an affordable, fast, easy, and nutritious way to get food. Rocks reduce the cost of grow mats for each weekly harvest. So we're going to cover in the economics of the basically the microgreen cultivation, the difference between grow mats and rocks. But this is an exciting, really pretty recent in the last few years discovery that rocks can be a catalyst for growing vegetables, including microgreens. It's time for change. Well, why now? The human population of Earth has more than doubled in 50 years, from under 4 billion to almost 8 billion people. We need to change our approach to food. Growing in rocks is a sustainable solution. Here's some tips on DIY for a homegrown solution. The following pages include instructions for a microgreen starter kit. where the grow mat can be replaced with rocks. Photographs of the microgreens growing in rocks in side-by-side tests with the grow mats are part of this presentation. Personally, what I've been working on and doing, so I'm happy to share with you all today. So this is a handout that comes with the Student Farmers Microgreen Starter Kit. Student Farmers, the nonprofit organization dedicated to in-home sustainable farming for students of all ages. Important, not high school, not just college or grad students, all ages, up to retirees and those that are spending extra time, maybe in a retirement home. I don't love the idea of a retirement home. When I watched it was the Blue Zone documentary. It was about really finding ways to engage old people with young people. I think there's teaching and learning that can come from humans being part of a community. So the students of all ages is something we take very seriously. And we can look at those who seek to improve their health. Should be all of us. Reduce cost of vegetables. Should be all of us. And promote environmental stewardship. Great. It's a team sport. Save the planet. And it's an individual and a family and a community sport to basically help improve our health. Superfood benefits of this bat mix I have covered in the prior slide. The medical disclaimer is pretty clear here. Content, here online and at studentfarmers.org or on any of the social media posts is for information or education purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice or consultations with healthcare professionals. Pretty clear. So when we talk about welcoming to the future of food, it's the Microgreen Superfood Starter Kit. This kit happens to come with the mats, and these mats are basically either hemp or jute, 4 packs of seeds, 2 trays that do not have holes. One of them goes below the one that has the holes, and the other one without the holes is the cover, and then there's the spray bottle. So more is available online, but I wanted you guys to at least see the range here. Steps. Let's talk about the steps first. Day 1, you lay a sheet of the grow mat in the grow tray with drainage holes and set it in the lower tray with the holes. So think of that as a double stack. And the idea is when the mat is wet, it's going to drain through and the reserve is going to be held in that lower tray. B, you spray to wet the mat. Okay, so that's important just to get a primer. Spread the seeds as C evenly on the mat using the seed envelope. In this case of the starter kit, each of those little seed packs is designed to have the 1 ounce that will hold basically enough to get an even spread of the seeds. You even out the seeds with your finger if you need to, a little bit, and then you spray to wet the seeds on the top. I also like, and this is something that we found online is very constructive, is to spray it wet, the underside of the upper tray lid. Just keeps it a little more moist. So now you cover the lid for the germination. Set it in a reasonably room temperature, cool place, not too hot or too cold, away from direct sunlight. So days 2 and 3. You spray the seeds on the mat twice a day, as well as the underside of the lid. That's morning, typically when I wake up, and then go to bed. And then you keep the lid covered. The growth should come out by the end of day 2, where you start to see them really coming up. And by day 3, they should measure about 1 inch. So that's an exciting moment because it looks like there's progress, but it happens much faster than with, traditional vegetables. Days 4 to 9. The growth should be about 1.5 inches on day 4. Remove the lid. This is important. So you remove the lid and move the tray to a windowsill or table near a window. You spray or add about 6 ounces to 8 ounces of water twice a day. Pouring is sometimes faster than spraying. So you can basically just dump it into the lower of the trays. And you pour the water evenly over the top is your alternate versus pouring the water into the lower tray. When the greens are 3 to 4 inches tall, they're ready to harvest. So this is just the daily rhythm from days 4 to 9. Now, day 10, you're pulling out the greens and you're eating them with their tiny little roots. And I'll go into that when we talk in the next slides, just about cutting them from the base. So let's talk about starting with reusing a plastic bottle as an alternate to the trays. Because what ends up happening with the trays is you have a cost of a few dollars, but if you can recycle or reuse a plastic bottle and put some rocks in it, this is an option I wanted to share with you guys for like the ultimate DIY solution. Now, you can see when the seeds go in that they start to germinate as well. What they're doing is they're pulling some of the nutrients from those rocks. The typical model here is to have sand at the bottom, maybe a 1/4 inch, and then some of the rocks. And these are just the river rocks, pea gravel that you would buy like at a hardware store in a big 50, pound bag that might cost $5. In days, it's amazing to see the difference, just like with the germination process with the trays. After, that 3rd day, and you start to take off the lid and you put them out by the windowsill, you start to see the greens, and these are in day 5 or 6 of the process. Now, the tray equivalent side by side is to go a little bit bigger with the grow trays than just the plastic container. So this has the grow mat in the base, and this is after about 2.5, 3 days of the germination with just the grow mat, and the rocks are on the side. Well, you can start to see there's a little bit of that germination with those little heads coming up from the seeds, because the seeds are just sown across the top of the rocks. But what really starts to make a difference is when you have a side-by-side and you can compare now, the left side is the grow mat and the right side is the rocks, that you're starting to see those microgreens come up out of the rocks. So a little layer of sand. In this case, it was 4 cups of rocks. So it's just 1/2 pound of rocks. And that's a 10-inch by 10-inch little grow tray versus spending, closer to 80 cents on the mat on the left. The rocks are only about 15 cents to fill that tray. So one of the things we're going to look at in this slide presentation is the economics, and I'll reference those numbers again. So now the rocks start to really flourish. So here's the tray where you've got in day kind of 4 and 5. So they've been lifted, the top lifted with the lid off, and they've been exposed to the sun, photosynthesis on a windowsill or on a table near a window. And you really start to see them turn from yellow to green. Photosynthesis can happen within that same first day. They're going to start to turn green. Really pretty exciting, especially for kids to see it transform so quickly. Lifting up, in this case, it was a test with a grow mat over the top of rocks to be able to show how the root system comes down through the mat. You can grow with a mat, you can grow with the mat on the rocks, or you can grow with just the rocks. The advantage of having a mat is you can cut it and you can ship or deliver it to friends or store it in the refrigerator without having them cut, because when they're cut, they die. So having the mat does have an advantage, although there's a slightly higher cost, because you can store it in little containers. We've used bioplastic containers rather than traditional plastic. So here's a comparison with the grow mat tray on the left, and then the 2 trays on the right have the rocks. The one in the middle has the mat over the top of the rocks, and the one on the right is just the microgreens in the rocks. And I had to personally test this to see side by side whether there was really going to be a loss. I was anxious and concerned that maybe the mat, because it would more evenly hold the rocks, they weren't sort of falling into crevices, wasn't going to grow as easily with the rocks to be as sort of big and lush of a yield. But I was blown away, surprised at the performance of the rocks. So cutting and eating the microgreens, it's as easy as literally taking some scissors and cutting them. Sometimes you just hold them at the top and put them right into an omelet, into a salad, into whatever you want to eat, including sandwiches. So I go through microgreens, like other people might just go through potato chips. It's really something that I built into my diet And it was because of that bat mix, that broccoli, arugula, and the turnip, and seeing all those advantages for physical health, wellness, skin, all those good things. So I talked about the economics, and here are some of the numbers that are really key to this whole process. Because if the numbers don't work, all the great talk about eating microgreens or having a healthier diet with microgreens, included in some of the foods like smoothies and other salads and sandwiches, doesn't make sense if they're too expensive. Well, right now at retail, here's a cost analysis for a comparison. The example retail of cut microgreens. Here's some baby arugula, $3.49. Let's call it $3.50. Well, you got to read the package, and it turns out that's 5 ounces. Some of them you might find are $3 or $4, and it's only 1 or 2 ounces, even smaller. So this happens to be one of the best values for purchased microgreens, and I wanted to set that as the bar. Well, $3.50 divided by 5 ounces is 70 cents per ounce. You multiply that by 16 ounces and you get a whopping $11.20 per pound. Crazy, right? Like you can buy meat and fish and lots of things for $11 a pound. So when we're preparing in something like the food desert, caloric intake, we have to be careful that we balance it with the reality of math. Well, retail microgreen cost range is actually from 11 to over $40 per pound. Some of them, imagine you're spending $3 or $4 on one that's just 1 or 2 ounces. Well, if it was 2 ounces, right, at $4, you get up to $16 really, really quickly. So it's one of those things that's even higher, up to the $32 range, right? Because if 2 goes into 16 ounces 8 times, and you're paying $4 per pack, that could be $32. So don't get seduced into buying microgreens necessarily unless you really have that disposable income, because it's crazy expensive relative to other foods. Growing them at home changes the entire game, as we'll show you in the math. So this is often at, 11 or 12, maybe more dollars per pound, unaffordable relative to other vegetables. Well, let's compare. So baby spinach. Here's $5.49. We'll call that $5.50. With 16 ounces for the pound, that's less than half the price. So it's basically going to come into a decision. You're at the grocery store, you're at the organic food market. Can I choose to feed myself and my family or friends that come over for dinner microgreens as more of an entree level component, not the entree, but the component, meaning it's not just a garnish on the side of a piece of fish or other vegetables or a salad or a sandwich. It's truly a larger component of an entree in stews. And I sometimes add bunches of them into with like lentils or with like quinoa rice and all kinds of things. I'm really making it an additive to entrees, not a garnish, because I can afford, in the way we've done this, to grow them more cost effectively than actually buying other vegetables. So the goal is for microgreen cultivation to develop a way to produce microgreens for equal or lower cost than other vegetables per pound. Just breaking it down, pound of food. So the microgreen cost, here's the home growing solution. The seeds are the primary recurring cost. Sure, there's a tray that costs a few dollars, that's fine, or a spray bottle that costs a couple dollars. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the yield required in dollars coming from basically each of these harvests. So with seeds, we're looking around $6.50 a pound. That's when you're buying seeds, in the 10 to 25 pound bags, not just the little packs. So if you're up for doing this, like I've been doing it, you buy the bigger bundles of seeds. We're going to refer you at the end to studentfarmers.org. We have lots of links and resources for the nonprofit where you can find these opportunities to purchase these products. So we take $6.50 a pound and we divide it by 16 ounces in a pound, and we get just 40 cents an ounce. So now we're having a conversation about realistic food production. Well, each of those 10 by 10 trays needs about 1 ounce of seeds. And there are 3 trays that are needed to grow 1 pound of microgreens. So now we do the quick math. We need the 40 cents per tray of seeds. We have 3 trays. That gets you to $1.20. So you need $1.20 of microgreen seeds, and they do range a little bit in cost, but the reality is that will yield a pound of microgreens. Okay, what are the other costs? The grow mats. This is a secondary recurring cost. Well, if the grow mat is a bundled $93 for 100 linear feet, and that's, 1,200 inches, and 10 inches is the width size of our tray, that yields 120 mats. Well, that's great. So now 10 by 10 inch mats, each one has a cost of 83 cents. So we need 3 of them to grow the pound of microgreens, because one of these trays, and I just brought one as an example that I'll hold up later when we're off the screen share, is going to be required for the pound of microgreens. So 3 times the 83 cents gets you $2.49 of mats. Here's the summary. The seed cost for every pound of microgreens is 3 times 40 cents, $1.20. The mat cost for every pound of microgreens, 3 times 83 cents, $2.49. This adds up to an incremental cost every time you harvest each week of $3.69 per pound of microgreens. Impressive, right? Because now with home growing, this is far less than the retail average of $11 to $40 per pound. We've cut 2/3 or more out of the cost just by having it on our windowsill and spraying during germination and adding water at the morning and the evening during a week-long growth. Not bad. Good for your brain to also just get out there and grow things, watch them on the windowsill. Good for your body to have greens, breathe in some of that fresh air, that plants produce indoors, and great for your body and the wallet as well. $3.69 instead of, $5.50 for spinach or $11 if you bought the microgreens in a store. So here's some added savings, and this is why I got excited about the rocks in this past year. If the seed cost doesn't change, and we're at a pound of microgreens, that's the 3 times the 40 cents, because we need 3 trays to make a pound. We're at $1.20. That hasn't changed. But the rocks versus the grow mats, for every pound of microgreens, we are only using 5 cents per little tray. That's 3 times 5, 15 cents for the rocks. And you can reuse the rocks if you want to wash them out, or you can just kind of churn through them. The total seed and rock cost per pound of microgreens is only $1.35. I don't know of anything where you can get this much nutrition for a pound of food for $1.35. It's awesome. So rocks create a tipping point for affordability. Using rock instead of grow mats dramatically reduces the incremental cost, and with windowsill farming at home, the light is free from the sun. We've got action items, and before I close, I'm going to just put these slides up, and then I'm going to show you some of the things that I have, in terms of the product, so that you can get some visuals on what these trays look like. Start growing at least some microgreens or leafy greens at home. That's the action item. It's easy and affordable indoors or outdoors. Plus, it's good for you, and it's good for the planet. You can learn more and get growing microgreens, studentfarmers.org/starter kit. And for leafy greens, with grow towers and a lot more advanced systems, including artificial intelligence, if you really want to have a farm at home, you can go to studentfarmers.org/Gardyn, Gardyn. I think you'll be blown away impressed with what is out there.
Here's what you get with the Student Farmers Microgreen Superfood Starter Kit. 4 packs of seeds to go with the 4 hemp mats. The grow tray that has the drainage holes, a lower tray that holds the water from spilling out on your counter or windowsill, an upper tray which is the same as the lower tray, but it is used when you flip it to put as a cap for germination to keep the light out, and a spray bottle. I've already loaded the spray bottle just with tap water, and the first step is to take one of the mats and just lay it out into the grow tray. Then to put that grow tray into the lower tray, the way you're covered. Take the spray bottle just with tap water, and you just want to get the mat a little bit moist because we're going to sow the seeds. So basically a couple spray coats, and you can sort of see that it pushes down into the corners and, you know, basically keeps it moist. Okay, the seeds are pre-mixed at 1/2 ounce each, and it is designed here, the way we set it up, so that all you have to do is just fold that edge out. And if you lift this from the inside, you can pinch it a little bit, and that's going to give you the ability to sow these seeds. So all you're going to do is sprinkle them around, and with your finger, after they're sprinkled, you're going to be able to even them out a little bit as well. So we kind of spread them around like that. Just empty the whole, you know, envelope. Spread them a little bit with your fingers. So this way you're going to get an even distribution. You don't want clumps. You want them to basically be spread out. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to just make sure that there's no sort of like little bald spots. And if there are, it's not the end of the world. You'll start to practice and get better and better at it, you know, each time. Then the next step is just to spray with the same sprayer, the tap water, and cover it evenly so that they're basically nice and moist for germination. The key here too to create the ideal sort of humidity setting is to also spray the underside, which is the bottom of your cover tray. And then it's as easy as taking this cover tray, turning it upside down, and just putting it over the top. You want this to be in basically a cool, you know, shaded place, not on a sunny windowsill, and let it sit for 3 days. What you do each morning and evening is just lift the top to check and give it another spray at the seeds, and then also at the underside of the cover. Off we go.